yours that you came in this morning. Meeting will be recorded and that goes to YouTube following the meeting. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware that this will be recorded, and that even if they're not participating, they may be shown. This call, if you any concern, can you please let us know. And I ask you please to switch your phones off to silent for the duration of the meeting. Filing application, order of presentation speaker will be the chair will announce the agenda number. Filing officer will introduce the application and any updates. Chair will call on public speakers. Then we will ask member officers for any application. Chair will then ask members questions. And the entire committee will discuss and debate the application. So members may seek further clarification and points before making the decision. We start today's meeting with apologies for absence. Sorry, Councillor Whale.
Can I seek clarification, please, from the legal on the position of ward members who are also members of this committee, and they have applications which are on their land, on their patch, as it were, and how they proceed in the way as ward members during the application.
Right, so if you're a ward member and you've already had discussions with your board and you've predetermined the application, so if you have made comments and they're published on the application, then you can only speak as a board member and leave the room. You can't debate or be a part of the voting on that application.
Can I go back? What if this is an application? Sorry, what if this is an application, which we have one later, which has been through, not this committee, but SSDC 4 times to my knowledge, and I, as the ward member and still am a ward member, have spoken on all occasions and at an appeal on that same application, which is now coming back to us yet again. I haven't predetermined it this time, I don't think, but how do I stand on that one?
Martin, is this an application this afternoon?
Yeah.
Could I suggest that maybe you take some advice from Paula in the break, and then you can decide if you need to make a declaration that's at the meeting. Is that okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We move back on to apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. You've got apologies for absence from Councillor Stephen Page and Councillor Tim Curley.
Thank you very much. Any other apologies? Okay. Move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 22nd of October. And been seconded, so members happy for me to sign them as a true record of the meeting? Yeah. Okay, all those in favour? Declarations of interest, item 3, does anyone have any items of declaration that they wish to note on this morning's meeting?
Yes, it's following on that 4 of these applications, yes, 4, 3 deferrals plus the back hindrance application. I have seen before, both in my capacity as a regulation committee and Area West member, a long time ago, admittedly, and also very recently, and this will apply to all of us on this committee, is where do we stand with the deferred applications that are now back before us, because some of us will have spoken and voted on those.
Thank you, Sue. Again, if you want to provide on the application this afternoon, then please do so. Or if you have any comment on ones that we've deferred.
Well, deferral, we won't have taken a vote on it, only on deferring that application. So you haven't made a resolution. You just heard the presentation previously. So if you're coming with an open mind to hear the presentation again, the amendments, and everything that's coming today, then that's fine. You can take part in the debate and the vote. If you feel it is a matter for each individual councillor. If you feel you are predetermined in what you've heard before, then you need to make that interest known and then not to be part of the debate and vote. But yeah, no resolution was made on the deferrals. That's quite common when we have a deferral. Obviously, you will have heard most of the presentation, but it's coming with that open mind. But good to be transparent if you feel you need to for the public to say that you have heard it, but you are coming with that open mind.
Okay, so following on from that, I'll just double check. Does anyone wish to make any declarations of interest? Online, your microphone may be switched on. I can ask anyone to switch on. Okay, so we'll move on to our first. So we move on to public question time. Does anyone have anything that they wish to bring forward in public? Is there anything raised? No. Move on to item 5, which is the first application for the land. Rural Road, Bruton, Somerset. I'll hand you over to Catherine for the presentation.
So the application site lies east of Bruton and links to the A359 via a proposed new access off Broome Road on the northern site boundary. The westernmost boundary abuts Starkey Lane, an unclassified single track. To the west and northwest of the site lie residential areas, and the other boundaries generally border open countryside. The south boundary abuts a disused, leaked and flood zones 2 and 3. You can see the application sign in the left-hand image with Bruton Railway Station to the south of it, and on the right you have a closer up aerial view. This application is in outline only, and consideration here only includes the proposed access and the principle of up to 60 new dwellings. All other matters are reserved. So the main issues subject to this presentation are the principle of development, highways, phosphates and the planning balance. The full assessment of all material considerations is set out in the published committee report. In terms of consultations, no objections were received from any statutory or non-statutory consultees. 139 objections have been received, including from the Town Council, mainly concerned with increased traffic, highway safety, flood, sewage, encroachment into the countryside, local infrastructure, ecology, and affordable housing. 8 reps were received in support, raising the need for homes due to the housing crisis, increased footfall for local retail, highways and ecology mitigation, sustainable construction and sustainable transport modes were seen as positives. The site lies on the southwestern edge of Bruton and will provide up to 60 new dwellings, public open space and a local area for play. The principle was found acceptable by South Somerset District Council Regulation Committee in 2019, and the decision was deferred pending phosphate mitigation only. Bruton is classified as a rural centre in the local plan, and the site is considered to be a sustainable location in transport terms, since it is in walking distance to a train station, bus stops, and local amenities such as post office, pharmacy, primary school, that sort of thing. The local plan policy SS5 sets out a current undersupply of 7 dwellings. As including this proposal and the adjacent development site, there would be an oversupply of 58%. However, the council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing sites. Notwithstanding the oversupply, therefore, the scheme would make a significant contribution to the borough-wide housing shortfall of 60 dwellings, of which 21 would comprise affordable housing. In terms of highways, this application was deferred by the July Planning Committee for further consideration of highways impact. Since then, 2 road safety audits were submitted. Somerset Highway Authority has reviewed these and has no objections. They have commented to say that the scheme will benefit pedestrians and will not increase risks to highway users. The 2 adjacent development sites are not reliant on each other, and the improvements would be provided irrespective of the timings of delivery of each scheme. The highways improvements would be secured via conditions and section 106. This plan shows the proposed site access to the north of the site. This is the indicative layout, again showing the proposed new access to the north of the site and also a pedestrian cycle link to the west of the site. The highways improvements would include the resurfacing of Darkey Lane, a new footway along the south side of Broome Road, a new gateway feature east of Darkey Lane to reinforce the speed limit, a pedestrian cycle link from Darkey Lane to the west, a new pedestrian crossing over Broome Road, a new crossing over Brewlands, and a section of priority working on Broome Road. To conclude on highways, paragraph 5 of the NPPS. Development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the impact on the network would be severe. So no objections have been received from Somerset Highway Authority, and therefore there are no reasonable grounds on which to refuse this application in terms of highway safety. Coming on to phosphates. The proposed mitigation comprises a packaged treatment plant and phosphate credits. This is considered acceptable and would be secured via section 106 and conditions. Somerset Ecology has no objections. Natural England has been consulted. They're just waiting to receive the shadow HRA, which has been endorsed by Somerset Council. Therefore, should committee resolve to approve this application, it should be subject to receipt of this approval, which we're waiting for from Natural England. The tilted balance, which is the presumption in favour of sustainable development set out in NPPF paragraph 11D2, applies here, given the council's lack of 5-year house and land supply. Therefore, permission should be granted unless the adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. This scheme would result in a number of benefits, including the significant contribution of new dwellings, a significant contribution to meeting local housing needs, an on-site local area of play, a public open space that would take up 30% of the site, biodiversity enhancements, highways improvements, a pedestrian cycle connection, which would encourage active travel, sustainable transport modes, and increased connectivity between residential areas and local amenities. There would be the economic benefits of increased footfall to local amenities, as well as benefits from employment opportunities during the construction phase. It is recognised that the Town Council has upheld its objections and 139 objections have been received. However, the benefits above are afforded great positive weight when taken together, while the conflict of policy SS5, which was the over provision of housing, is afforded only minor negative weight. Therefore, the benefits arising from the scheme would outweigh any negative impacts. If the proposal for these reasons is considered to comprise sustainable development and should be granted without delay in accordance with paragraph 11. And that's my conclusion.
Thank you very much. So we move on to public questions, and we start with Leslie Hutchinson. If you would like to take the microphone on the end table, then you press the button start and you have
Thank you. I'm not starting just yet. I'm just apologising for using my phone because I couldn't get my laptop. That's fine. So 1 second. Thank you for the time to speak today. I want to strongly object to the planning application on the following grounds. Firstly, there's a failure to get a second opinion on highway supplies. Committee members agreed at the last meeting to defer the decision while an independent second opinion was sought. Arguably, a second opinion is not a request of the company who provided the original highways report to revisit that and make further comment. Officers appear to have misunderstood the term second opinion, despite the fact that it's a plain English term that's used in everyday language. This raises judicial review grounds, either irrationality or Wednesbury unreasonableness, i.e. no reasonable person would consider this course of action taken as a second opinion. You have in fact received two separate independent reports, one in 2019 and a further one now. Both identified gaps and limitations on the one commissioned by the developer. They identify risks to pedestrians and an inadequate sweat pattern analysis. Both reach the same conclusion that the proposed scheme is not safe. You need to demonstrate in your deliberations that due consideration and equal weight is given to those independent reports. My second point is on failure to comply with the law. At the last meeting, we pointed out that if you approve the 1.2 metre proposed footpath, you will be willfully breaching Department of Transport and Central Government Inclusive Mobility Guide. Footways and footpaths should be 2 metres, allowing enough space for 2 wheelchair users to pass. This is not 1.2 metres. From advice I've taken, you will also section 6, 13 and 15 of the Equalities Act. I pointed this out last time and nothing on the papers has said anything in consideration of that. Furthermore, the application highlights a dropped crossing, a tactile pavement, and makes reference that the footpath will make people feel safer. They are safer than they are now. This is false. It creates an illusion of safety, and the evidence shows that that footpath will routinely be breached by HGVs. My third point is on failure to reasonably foresee the risks to pedestrians. Officers claim that because there is no evidence of accidents, the supposition is the scheme is safe. That is false and it's ludicrous. When you consider those independent reports that have come through, it's not a reasonable position to take that when you've got a significantly more number of people walking up that on the non-compliant breached footpath, that they are going to be feeling safer. You must consider the law in principle, the common law principle of negligence. You must take decisions exercising the level of care that a reasonable person would take and exercise given the information that you have received. Public authorities have a duty to protect people from harm, and in this instance, approving this application is arguably the authority creating the source of danger. Having read the reports and seen that ground footage that was presented before, would you let your eligible relative or family members walk up that route? In 2019.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes is up. Thank you.
Okay.
Next slide, please, call Dan Cox from Highgate Transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Darren Cox. I'm an associate highway engineer at Highgate and an accredited road safety auditor. We have 3 main matters of concern: pedestrian trips, sweat path analysis, and Darby Lane. The absence of collisions involving pedestrians is not an appropriate justification for not providing a wider footway where possible. I was on site last week and noticed that drivers adapted their driving style when they approached and past pedestrians. The alternative, carriageway markings and or covered surfacing, will become obscured by detritus over time and will require frequent refreshment to be effective. Physically narrowing the carriageway to 3.2 metres allows cyclists to adopt a primary position in the carriageway and prevent overtaking, as recommended by the independent Stage 1 road safety audit. The place on Bruton Road is generally 1 to 1.2 metres wide. This makes it difficult to use to pass one another. Pedestrians entering the carriageway suddenly could be at risk from conflicts with passing traffic. A wider footway should be provided where it is possible to do so, as recommended by the Stage 1 road safety audit. Narrowing the carriageway and providing wider footway is in the interest of the safety of road users, namely pedestrians and cyclists. Sweat path analysis. The independent Stage 1 road safety audit recommended that sweat path analysis be undertaken to ensure that all anticipated vehicles can pass safely. Sweat path analysis has been undertaken for a 13.61 metre long goods vehicle turning left into Broome Road from Road. The maximum length of an articulated HGV is 16.5 metres. There is no evidence that the sweat path undertaken was ever provided or considered by the audit team. Sweat path analysis is not consistent with an actual articulated HGV turning left into Broome Road from Broome Road as demonstrated by photograph 2 in our technical notes. The purpose-built link from site to Darky Lane is proposed. However, there is no evidence that highways have requested a financial contribution towards lighting, signage or drainage. Without lighting, signage and drainage, Darky Lane is not considered to be an appropriate route for pedestrians and cyclists to travel between the application site and Broome Road. The alternative is for pedestrians to walk along the section of Broome Road, which does not benefit from a footway, placing them in direct conflict with motor vehicles. Paragraph 114B of the National Planning Policy Framework requires a safe and suitable access to the site can be achieved for all users. It is not considered that the proposed pedestrian routes by an unlit section of Darky Lane or the section of Broome Road that does not benefit from a footway fulfills these criteria.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I just actually press the button on the front to turn the mic. Thank you. Our next speaker is Mark George, who's unfortunately unable to attend, and I believe Beth will be reading the statement.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this is the statement from Mark George. My problem with the planning application is the proposed footpath along Broome Road. As we demonstrated previously with an HGV, it is impossible to turn into Broome Road from Burrowfield without overhanging the proposed footpath, therefore causing a potential hazard to pedestrians using it. The same will apply to large vans and tractors. As our workshop and transport yard is a mile long Broome Road from the junction in question, there is a regular movement of HGVs turning here, thus avoiding the 7.5 tonne restriction in the town direction. That's it.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Kevin Viney, who is the landowner. Thank you, Mr. Viney. If I just actually press the button, switch the mic.
Good morning. Thank you for listening to what I have to say. I represent the owners of the land south of the Broome Road, which is what is known as Bakelose Field. It's a field that we've owned since the marriage of the family since the early 1950s. I just want to give some context, really. In 2017, Broome Town Council produced a policy document which recommended that our land and the land on the Broome Road were the preferred development sites. And we were approached by the Town Council, the then County Council around Glasgow, and Broome Town Trust to put in an application in the next piece of land that should be developed in Broome. We did this with their encouragement and cooperation, and we collaborated. Build houses generally, and the application was passed in 2019, as you know, by the South Somerset District Council Regulation Committee. We're rather hoping that you will support their decision then today. In more general terms, we're a multi-generational family in Broome. We've lived in Broome all our lives. I've been in Broome virtually all of my life, 60 years, and we've lived at this end of the town all our life. We lived in Bakelose House, which is obviously attached to Bakelose Field, which is currently owned by Hutchinson's. And we've also lived the rest of our time either in Broome Lands or Broome Avenue, or Broome Close rather, which is where we live now. And throughout the entire time we've lived there, we've had to use this junction, which is causing so much concern. And throughout that time, there is no record of incidents, either involving pedestrians, cars, buggies, wheelchairs, vehicles, or anybody else, in that matter, involving either Darky Lane or the junction with the Broome Road. Apparently, all these concerns that have arisen since the application has been put in is rather distressing to those of us who've lived there all that time, because obviously, if there is this much danger, we're rather, although we don't accept it and we're not aware of it, it's the same council have done something about it before. The current concerns, relevant or not, date back to 2019 and were stated at that time and were rejected at that time. The highways officers have put forward a report again. The planning officers have said that our proposal or the application today will fulfil all the criteria regarding planning. I just say we've also been in support of the improvement of the town. We are proud that the field is going to be developed. We ran a big into the town back in the 30s to the 1970s. We think the affordable housing is long overdue in Bruton and will be very welcome and will offer better opportunities for housing and for people in the town. We think the 39 additional properties and the SO106 project contributions obviously offer opportunity for people to move into the town and around. Can I just finish by saying, we think this is an exciting opportunity for the town. And it should be welcomed by the town and by yourselves. So can I just say very respectfully that you support this application because I think it means the town.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Jason, stop the meeting. We've lost the owls.
We're just going to pause 1 second before we continue because our owls have disappeared. By owls, I mean our camera.
Right, I'm going to try it.
Step and see if we can get the back on. So I've flown back into the room, so to speak, so we will continue. Can I please call Ewan Jones, who is the representative of Broome Town Council? Thank you, Ewan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee. I remind the committee that the access proposals are not reserved. You have heard that the current proposals are on the highway safety grounds, contrary to paragraph 115 of the National Planning Policy Framework. You should refuse this application on the grounds that the developer has refused to implement the recommendations of his own highway safety audit points 3.8 to 3.9, and note under point 3.10 that the auditor was not even provided with the sweat park analysis, so the sweat park analysis has not been audited. I sit on the Somerset Board. At its 23rd of July meeting, the morning that this application was last at committee, Councillor Ross White, then lead member of Prosperity and Development, said, "We want this to be a walking and cycling council. It is the chief executive's top priority." This priority had clearly not got down to the council's highways department, who have considered safety to drivers, but not safety to pedestrians and cyclists. I trust the committee will respect the council's strategy. You have not wanted to oppose in favour of an application when the first pensioner or child is killed. It should be rejected. It has reasonable grounds for rejection, and it should only be brought back when there are safe access proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have Lucy Trimnell here or online? Lucy is the board representative.
Thank you, I was going to have that. So I'm not really sure why I or any of us are here today, because it doesn't feel as though there's any opportunity for any contributions to make a difference to this or any other planning committee these days. And nothing has changed in this application since it came here before. I'm hugely concerned that the breach to meet our housing obligations is going to override our ability to err on the side of caution and listen to genuine residents' concerns. We've seen in Britain before how examples of things that look good on paper don't work in practice. We only have to rewind to last summer when a signpost was placed in the middle of a pavement and of course had to be moved because in practice you couldn't get a pram or a wheelchair past. This new road arrangement may work on paper, 30-mile limits, the speed gateways and road layouts, but in real life people don't always obey speed limits and they don't always give way. The lorries approaching this turning from the Broome direction will have to mount the pavement to get around the corner. The town council demonstrated this with photographs as evidence, but these were seemingly overlooked, and I can't understand why. I requested a meeting with Highways and a site visit, none of which were apparently advisable. I wonder why. Has anyone on this committee been to see the road or see the pressure of the roads in the town? I note at the bottom of page 16, there is a list of benefits that this site could offer. Number one was a significant contribution of new dwellings towards the council's housing shortfall. Well, it's not Bruton's responsibility to help the council to meet any obligations, given how unsuitable the road infrastructure is to support it. Building needs to be done in the right places. This is not the right place and will put further pressure on our small and already overcrowded roads. Pedestrian, this is number two, pedestrian and cycle connection between Darby Lane and the application site. Well, there's only a benefit if there is a housing estate there. There's no benefit to anybody if this isn't built. So it's not a necessity if it's not built. Economic benefits is number three, from employment opportunities during construction. Well, if we're planning to only employ people from Britain to build these, that's fair enough. But of course, we know in practice that's not real. So I don't see how that works, and it's misleading. So it seems from reading the report that since there's no record of accidents on this stretch of road, then none will happen. Well, let's see when 120 odd extra cars come along here multiple times a day, plus all the service vehicles. I pray that they're correct, but want it on record that I do not believe that this road layout guarantees safety, and for that reason, I believe the committee should not vote in favour.
Thank you, Lucy. Okay, so we move on to Simon Gaines from Acorn Property Group.
Good morning, Simon Gate from Acorn, the applicant. Highways is obviously the issue here. The scheme is compliant. It's designed by highway experts. It's got confirmation from Somerset County Council that the scheme is compliant. There's been a safety audit. The design experts, two design experts, one from our side, one from the north side, have all said that it is compliant. It's been scrutinised and scrutinised. We have consulted and we have met Bruton Town Council and we tried to find some common ground. We offered, because there will be further detailed design, further traffic calming measures if necessary. And at the time, Bruton Town Council were not aware of the vehicle activation sign that is designed into the scheme that will be close to our access point, putting speeds up and encouraging people to slow down. So I have to reiterate again, our scheme is designed by experts. It's been scrutinised twice. There have been swept path analysis. There is further detailed design, and unfortunately, I think there's been some misinformation presented at this committee. Our scheme also deals with surface water. We've got an attenuation pond which will be built into the scheme. I think that's really important that it has the scheme and it will also slow down the water transfer into the river body. Affordable. I've spoken with our local White Horse Housing Association that is delivering affordable homes at our site in Broomall already. There's a great need for housing within Bruton, affordable. We will be delivering 21 affordable units, and the majority of those will be for social rent. There is a great need for the new generation to have housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Can I just ask officers if they wish to any points?
Yes, in my presentation, I missed out one of the benefits of the scheme, which is a financial contribution to the NHS by the applicants of £26,670.
Thank you. Do any members have any points of clarification at this point? Councillor Osborne?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. You've quoted two road audits, but I understand that one, certainly from one of the speakers.
Councillor Osborne, is this a question or a point of clarification?
It's a point of clarification because I'd like to know why there was no appraisal done in the officer report or any comment on this highway safety audit that Bruton Town Council paid for and submitted, because it would have been very helpful to have known what the officers know about that.
Well, because I'm a planning officer and I'm not a highways expert, so I take all my advice from Highways Authority.
But would you like to comment on the highways perspective?
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Is that on? Yeah, John Fellingham, I'm the service manager for Highways Development Management at Sunset Council. Unfortunately, Mr. Garland, who you've obviously had in this committee previously, is off sick at the moment, so I'm substituting for him today. So I will endeavour to answer your questions as best I can, but obviously I caveat that there'll be some that I see this case obviously in a bit more detail on. In relation to the point that's just been raised for clarification in terms of the town council's road safety audits, I'm unaware of when it was actually provided to the council in terms of the submission, but obviously for our point of view, obviously if it was released, it would be passed to us, we obviously didn't review it. That's a reasonable question to make. From the members, what we've said to them, what's been said today, as has been said before, there have been 2 independent road safety audits that have been carried out. These are under the guidance, just for a point of clarification for the members, under the national guidance, these are done independently, and then they are submitted to us, and then as a Somerset Council, we review those independently as well. So as such, the comments that we have been made are based on the independent views, and they have been put forward, and they form a basis of what goes on to the next step should members take to approve the scheme. Those recommendations we take forward as the next stage. It's not the end of it, it's part of the first step in a long process of technical approvals before elements get delivered on the ground. As such, an RSA is about a guidance document to the officers involved to highlight issues that have been raised, and it's down to the applicant, which has been done to the evidence that I've seen, to set down to those and how they would respond to those. It was then for the authority to take on board those comments that have been raised to say whether they're acceptable or not. As you've seen from the report that has been put to you by the planning officers thus far today, that they were considered to be acceptable. Obviously, I can't speak for the Bruton Town Council comments that have been made in terms of their road safety audit. I had the privilege of reading it through myself, and I understand the highlights of points that have been raised. But I consider that those are actually interpreted into the other points of the road safety audits that have been raised previously as well.
Okay, excuse me, thank you.
Can I come back?
Okay, I'm going to move us into questions because I feel we're steering into questions anyway.
Can I
hang on, Councillor Osborne, I'm still speaking. So we'll move into questions. I will go to Councillor Power and then come back to Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chair. On page 46, I noticed there was a comment about time on verges. And I'd just like some clarification or actually to know which verge the tile marks were on. Was it opposite the adjacent next to Brewland, or the opposite side of the road that links up to Courtblade Street, please? Thank you.
Could you just repeat that question? I just noted it down.
So on page 46, there was a comment about tire marks. And I want to know which verge the tire marks had. Was it on the side of Brewlands, on the adjacent side of where the house is, where the give way sign or give way to oncoming traffic bit, or the other side which links up to Courtblade Street, please?
Is that page 46 of which document?
Of this, hang on.
Our report. The officer's report. Bear with us.
So they do have a paragraph number.
It's page 34 actually. It's not very. Hang on, sorry.
Okay, so it's the paragraph that starts with the Highway Authority and the safety audit process. The third one up at the bottom of page 46.
Thank you, Chair. Having a review of that there, unfortunately, I'm not knowing the history is like to be done. I don't know what that's in terms of what those that many. Because unfortunately, the way it's written, it doesn't give a specific on which those that's referring to. So I wouldn't want to speculate here necessarily.
Excuse me, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Just having a quick read at a second. So, I mean, it does answer itself in that paragraph, but if you'd like to come back.
Well, thank you, Chair, but the thing is, I feel that I need to know the clarification of which roads that's coming from. Because if it's got tire marks on the verge, let's say to the side where the footpath is going to be, if you've got tire marks on that side, and then you're going to put footpath, it just obviously proves that a footpath there is an absolute safety risk. So until we have that clarification, I think that's it. Well, no words really.
Okay, first, can I suggest that if you've had that question, via future, you email that in with the officers, so they have the opportunity to review it. Sarah, you want to go?
Yeah, I'm coming back on the response to the officer that when I asked about was the independent Bruton Town Council highways audit done by a qualified road safety auditor, as stated by the author, the planning officer replied that she was just a planning officer, not a highways expert. Did you send it on to highways to get a comment from them? If you didn't, why not? And can highways confirm that they did receive and did have a chance to comment on this report? So either highways experts, tells your experts, so either the experts saw it or they didn't. Which is it?
Yes, Catherine.
Sorry, can I just clarify which report we're talking about now? Is it the one that came in last week?
I'm talking about the Bruton Town Council report, which I believe they did distribute, they did share it, presumably with highways. I'd be amazed if they hadn't. Or with the planning officers. I think it was last week. Maybe they can clarify. I just want to know, have highways actually had a chance to replace that? And what were their findings? Because we should have been told.
Thank you, Sue.
So either they saw it or they
Sue,
didn't.
okay, thank you. We've got a question.
Yes, so, sorry, yes, the email we received last week with the highways document was forwarded on to John Bellingham, who's the service manager for highways, and he reviewed it last week and he's made a comment on it today.
John, do you wish to add anything on that?
Just to follow on that, obviously, thank you for the clarification. As I say, well, we received that RSA last week. And obviously, had a review of that last week, and as I say, I noted the key points that were being raised. I believe, as I've said already, that the officer's report and presentation has made reference to kind of key points that were raised as part of those, because I understand that they are fairly similar in terms of some of the previous observations that have been raised. In terms of the footway, 1.2 metres, I understand the concern for the benefit of the members of the committee. 1.2 metres can be seen to be acceptable in some circumstances, and obviously our independent road safety auditors have reviewed the scheme and they felt that it was acceptable. There is always a balance when you're dealing with rural locations and rural roads. There is always a balance that needs to be had in terms of that safety and acceptability, and we accept that as part of the process. Our team reviewed that. They felt that that was necessarily considered to be acceptable in terms of the wider scheme package. As I said earlier, obviously this is the first part of the feasibility kind of study stages. Technical approval processes will come forward should members decide to grant planning consent, which will then require it to go through a more rigorous approach in terms of technical design and safety approach. So obviously any scheme that's brought forward, the Highway Authority will be satisfied that it is acceptable in highway safety terms. I understand and appreciate the concerns that have been raised, but as I say, the officer recommendation that's been put to the planning officer, so having read it through and looking through the points, I believe that those elements have necessarily been addressed through the report.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, probably a question today, but I'm going to go back to the best. Excuse me, we've been very quiet, listened to everyone else, so please allow members to speak.
It was
the best.
Yeah, it was back to this point about the width. The first speaker clearly said that there was a set regulation of a minimum of 2 metres. And I wondered how we got round this by not going against this. Is this a statutory requirement that we shouldn't change? Or how have you justified going down below?
In terms of the planning, in terms of if in terms of how it's set out in national guidance, it's obviously set out in Manual for Streets, which is a national standard guidance document. There's a number of other design guidance documents, emphasis on the word guidance. There are a number of different elements in terms of width. Yes, the standard is that you would normally say in brand new development in urban locations, you say 1.8 to 2 meters wide footways. However, there is an ability to reduce those sizes to 1.2, 1.5 meters in terms of that process. As we heard from one of the speakers, they suggested or had made a recommendation about reducing the carriageway width. However, in doing so, generally speaking, in terms of carriageway widths, you can only necessarily drop that down to about 4.1 for 2 vehicles to pass. Anything less than that, vehicles can't pass each other without having to pull in or wait, which is causing excessive manoeuvres, which doesn't allow for free flow of traffic. In terms of the question, in terms of footways, as I say, it's guidance throughout the national standard of guidance. Those allow us to be able to say there's either 2 meters or we can put 1.2 meters. It allows us for 1.5 meters. It allows for an element of flexibility. But when we look at something in terms of a case by case basis, it allows us to be able to review those and allow us to, as our safety audit team and our auditors to look at it, be able to make a judgment call on whether it's acceptable or not in terms of what's been put in front of us. 1.2.
I'm a little uneasy with that because what you're actually saying is that you're making the ability for the traffic to flow on the road above public safety on the pavement.
That's not what I'm saying. All I'm trying to say is explain what the guidance documents are in a little bit of so it gives the members an understanding of whatever decision you decide to make around the table today, that you've had all the information that you can to make the right decision based on what you want to say. All I'm saying is, in terms of answer to your question, that in terms of widths, in terms of footway, it's set as guidance. It's national design standards of guidance. Those guidance do change over time, and then new elements come in and new recommendations are brought forward to us. We've seen a number of different elements come in over the years that change that, but generally speaking, they have the up to 2 meters, but the guidance still allows a narrowing down to 1.2, 1.5. But that is down to a case by case basis when reviewed by the appropriate officers at the time, when it's put forward, as our safety audit team have done, to say that that's acceptable or not. And when we do that, we look at the wider location as well to make sure that we're satisfied in the round that that has been safe and appropriate place for it to go.
Thank you. Councillor Kendall.
Thank you, Chair. Can you just elaborate more on this natural England?
Andy, this is just questions at the moment. Is it a specific question?
It's going to be different. It's all to do with have you heard by now from Natural England? If not, how does that affect this application if it is to be approved?
We heard from Natural England, the original consultation. How it works in terms of phosphates generally is that the applicants submit their phosphate mitigation scheme, and then they submit a what we call a shadow habitats regulation assessment. That's all then reviewed by Somerset Ecology Services, and then they require a certificate of reservation for the phosphate credits. That's all been submitted, so the shadow HRA has been endorsed by Somerset Ecology Services, and then it's just a technical process that we send that to Natural England. They say yes, that's fine. So we get that comment, and then we're good to go. It's just a box ticking exercise, and we've not had any occasion where after the information has been endorsed by Somerset, we've not had any objections from Natural England, because it's a scheme that they developed, basically. So we have if the scheme's approved today, then there would be a wait for the legal agreement to be signed, and in the next week or two, Natural England would just submit their comments on that shadow HRA.
Okay.
Let's go.
Thank you, Chair. I've got some concerns about this because if the committee was minded to refuse this application, would it go to judicial appeal like planning applications in Castle Perry have and then be overturned? Which will then cost the taxpayer a lot of money. So is there any guidance can be given to the committee that if we refuse this permission, that it won't go to judicial appeal be passed?
Thank you, Councillor. My name's Thomas Jones. I'm the area manager for development management, South area and East area. So I wouldn't have met anybody before. Nice to see you. As with all applications, if Somerset Council refuses an application, the applicant is at liberty to appeal that decision. So that's the simple answer. There's obviously a more complicated answer within that, but I could make some comments, but I want to reserve them to listen to the discussion. But obviously, where a council has refused it for reasons where there's no evidence, we use the term significant and demonstrable. That comes from the NPPF. If we don't have significant and demonstrable evidence that suggests an application should be refused, then it's possible the appeal could be allowed and permission granted. That's the basic principles. I don't want to go into any specific issues at this time, but I'm quite happy to answer any questions in that respect.
Thank you, Councillor T.
Thank you, Chair. Under policy TA5, the requirement is to get safe, inclusive and accessible access to the site, and that's not an out-of-date policy. That's policy. Are there any other routes other than this 1.2 metre wide footway?
John, did you want to answer that?
Make some notes on that one. It's difficult to say. Obviously, the applicants put forward a scheme that members have in front of them to start this morning. In terms of that route, they've obviously tried to provide, as it's been debated as well this morning, an alternative route along Darkley Lane. Is that? Yeah, Darkley Lane, an alternative route along there as well, for pedestrians and cyclists to move along that route certain space they see fit. We can only comment on what is in front of us and what is in here now. It would be basically to speculate on other routes in and around that location that may not be accepted. All I can say to you is the fact that we have reviewed what has been put in front of us. We have found that it's considered to be acceptable in highways terms, in terms of the road safety that has been assessed and given a recommendation of improvement to the planning team to do that. As there is a plan, obviously a number of plans being shown to you this morning through the presentation that kind of sets out a number of package of measures that have been put forward. One of those is obviously the other route that's going to go through the site and up to Darkley Lane with some improvements that's going to work on that. Now, obviously, if members are looking to approve this scheme, we can have further discussions with the applicant in terms of that section there, if needs be. That was a recommendation by the members. But as I say, in terms of speculating on other areas to the one that needs to come forward, I can't do this one.
I think you may have misunderstood the question. Have you assessed the Darkley Lane access to see whether that is a suitable and convenient and inclusive alternate route for this? In other words, is the concern of 1.2 metre narrow footpath on the main route overcome by there being an alternative route for those who would need a wider footpath?
My apologies. From my point of view, in reviewing the information that's been submitted and from reading Mr. Garland's comments and also reviewing this, I believe that the Darkley Lane proposals are resurfacing other works that can be seen as a viable alternative, but also it's providing a link through the site itself. So it keeps pedestrians and cyclists or splits pedestrians and cyclists away from the northern access and the northern routes along that northern road. So yes, that route is considered acceptable. Obviously, the applicants put forward a number of measures that have been done to improve that route from its current standing and condition, which are considered acceptable to the Highway Authority. As I previously said, if needs be, if members were minded to grant consent this morning, then obviously we can have a discussion in terms of with the applicant to see if there's any further measures that can be incorporated into those works to try and bring that up to take into account any comments that have been made in this forum this morning.
Thank you. I'm going to go Councillor Osborne and then I'm going to move to Councillor Osborne, Councillor Well, and then I'm going to move to vote.
Thank you, Chairman. I was also curious that the sweat path analysis used an average length of vehicle of 13.6 metres apparently, rather than going for a sweat path analysis to show that the maximum length of vehicle is 16.5 metres could actually successfully navigate the road and the turns. Why was that? Why did you not look at 16.5 metres? Bearing in mind an awful lot of agricultural vehicles now, with tractors and trailers and other implements on them, are getting progressively longer and probably are up to 16 metre point. And also those agricultural vehicles are also getting a hell of a lot wider as well. And apparently there are a lot of those. You've got lorry depots there which will have maximum length vehicles. Why was that maximum not gone forward to prove that you could take those?
Thank you, Tom. Sorry, John.
To give an answer, it's down to the applicant in many respects to provide the largest vehicle that will utilise that junction for us to best for us to assess. It's down for them to provide us with the relevant information and say this is the largest vehicle that will have access to that. Now, generally speaking, with HGVs, you're looking at 13.6 articulated. They are reasonable sized vehicles that can be utilised on those days. We also look at refuse vehicles and obviously fire appliances. Now, obviously, we've looked through the tracking. We considered that the tracking was acceptable in process. I appreciate what the member of the committee is saying in relation to a larger vehicle. That would be down to the applicant to provide a larger vehicle for us to be able to review.
Thank you, Councillor Ware.
Thank you, Jen. I'd just like clarification, please, on the shipping balance on the 5-year housing supply, which we are again being asked to consider. Can I know it's in the report, but can the officer please explain why in their opinion, the shipping balance is in favour of development and not the objections in this case?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The planning balance is, you don't stack up to the benefits, you get a certain number of points, and harm, you get a certain number of points. It's not a matter of stacking, it's about looking at what are the significant positives, significant negatives, and making a balanced judgment using your experience as a planner. So as is in the report and in the summary and in the presentation that Catherine's given today, there is significant weight in favour of delivering affordable housing, in particular, and housing in Somerset. There always is, but when we don't have a 5-year housing land supply, we've seen in several appeals inspectors making reference to that, saying that it's significant benefit. The wording we use around the other benefits and harms will come from wording that inspectors have used in appeals and our judgment. So in this instance, it's apologies to members of the public to talk technically about this, but paragraph 11 of the National Planning Policy Framework says if there are, if you don't have the 5-year housing land supply, if there are no significant and demonstrable reasons to refuse the application, so you don't stack them up to get several made, it's significant, it's kind of in their own right. In this instance, we've listened to the and considered the comments of the statutory consultees. There's been discussions in this case for some considerable time to get the application to a position where those impacts are considered to be acceptable in planning policy terms. And there's no looking at what the consultee response to be. There's none of that is saying there is a significant adverse impact. Does that help?
Yes, I think it deserved an explanation, but it does influence all our decisions of late. And I think the public should know that's what we have to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll leave this into debate and I'll start with Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. Just reading the updates and the new report that came forward, I'm in complete agreement with my colleague, Councillor Trimnell. I can't really see much change in this. And as from my last question that I have just given, and they can't tell me which verge has got the tyre marks on it, I'm greatly concerned. Also, I'm going to say it, I said it once, I'm going to say it again, Bruton is an old Saxon town. It is not fit for 21st century traffic. It's incredibly narrow going down Portland Street, which is one of the leading roads leading onto this site. Also, when the high street in Bruton is shut, so if you want to access to this area of town, if you're coming from Wincanton, for example, if you go from Wincanton, you will come to Redlands Crossroads, and you'll take a right and you'll go towards Brewham. And then for a while, and that's incredibly narrow as well, and it will bring you on to the Brewham Road, and that becomes incredibly busy. Also, I might have missed it, but I haven't seen it. I think we forgot to mention that I think back in 2019, a young sexy schoolgirl came to this committee and said and expressed her safety concerns about this application. So I'd just like to know if any members want to take that into consideration before voting on this application. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you very much, Chair. I mean, we're all on different pages, right? I'm looking at page 34. Goodness knows where that is. It's where the tyre marks comment came from earlier. Perhaps Councillor Power hasn't read that. You there yet? I'm on the online report. There's a huge amount of information there, which specifically addresses the pavement width for highway safety. And I would like to draw that to my colleague's attention. So the presence of tyre marks on the verge are noted. However, this does not demonstrate the revised junction width would be too small. It then goes on to say, and this is the important bit, I think, for committee members to consider. It's understood that there are local concerns about the width of the pavement and the main road through the town, etc., etc. Bruton, as with other small historic towns, and yes, it is Saxon town, a very beautiful town as well, is positioned opposite the main road. The town's historical layout, I'm nearly done, Chair, was not designed with large vehicles in mind. I agree with Councillor Power on that point. And therefore, there are certain pinch points and locations where the pavement is of restricted width. However, this is the important part. There is no current policy requirement for development to address the pedestrian experience throughout the town. It's not considered that this matter, therefore, warrants the refusal of the application. That's the key point. And whilst I have sympathy with Councillor Power, I can't place an objection on that point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor C.
Thank you. It seems to me that there's lots of emotion over whether or not a specific measure has been met here. We're talking about a road which I would characterise as a narrow two-way road. It is definitely a two-way road. It is grass verges both sides with hedges. It's not the sort at the moment of road that would have a very heavy foot traffic, and I wouldn't anticipate it having an extremely heavy foot traffic if this development were to be allowed. It is not in a historic part of the town. It's in an area which is reasonably widely spaced. Yes, in somewhere between 40s and 80s, the houses we've got there, they are pepper-potted around cul-de-sacs. It's not the stone walls of the middle of the town that we're talking about, where there's no space for pedestrians to take a moment, wait for the vehicle to go round. That's a perfectly reasonable way of avoiding being in harm. Equally, it's down to the driver of the doesn't look a particularly tight corner until you try moving an articulated lorry around it, which is a fairly extreme example. And presumably, if the articulated lorries are regularly using that junction, regularly making this turn, there would be scarring where they regularly overran the curve. The verges. The verge to the south looks very steep. And I would expect if the lorry overhang were impacting that, it would be really obvious and it wouldn't happen twice because it would be quite damaging. I'm a little surprised that we have been talking about such a restricted footpath. But I think for the, in terms of people being able to get along and avoid being in danger, there is a somewhat different point being made on the width at that turning point than, for example, the full length of the road. I can accept that the full length of the road is difficult at the moment because you have to share it with vehicles. I can accept that the full length of the road is difficult at the moment because in winter and winter month and at night, there's very little other than cultural lighting. There's not a proper lighting of the road. And it seems to me that as highways have asserted, that road will be a lot safer after the work has been done. So I'm afraid I've heard both sides. I've heard the objections and I've heard the response. And actually, and with the response, I think it was I did throw a bit of a red herring with the alternative access. Of course, you have to get past that narrow path with 1.2 metre footpath in order to get there. But in my experience of that road is not such that I would have concerns in the round. I think you can through specific non-compliances with targets, with aspirations, as the Homeless Officers have explained, they've been back and forth with this. And there's a difference between providing what's perfect and reasonable. I think I've no difficulty with respect to this point traffic use. With respect to the wider development, I'm afraid I do feel our hands are tied. Not only the group identified just some growth and accept this is massively more growth than the plan expected. If you actually read the planning policy, it's not even contravening policy SD1, because policy SD1 says if we have an out of date policy, and that's code for no 5-year plan, then we developments out into smaller settlements. It actually has quite a large allocation in the plan for that. So I'm afraid we haven't got reasonable grounds to review the 12 concern. And I can't see that there is a reasonable planning consideration which has crossed the line to me. They're all on it, but none of them has crossed it.
Thank you, Councillor Pound and Councillor Well.
Thank you. But as actually the member of the committee that actually knows the area, I think I'm going to disagree at that point. That's fine. I can agree with the policy that no one hands tied on certain things, Peter. I completely agree. But when it comes down to housing targets and my resident safety, I think I'm going to take a different consideration than that. The fact is that when you go further down the road, I disagree with what you said about the historic part of the town. Court Place Street is a historic part of the town, actually, and it's incredibly narrow. And actually, people's arms get clipped by lorries that go through there. It is a safety risk. I know you say about street light, people could look left and right. Yeah, we've all like to have highways training, looking left and right, make you look and listen. But it's incredibly dangerous. I mean, when the Library Junction was done last summer, I was out there with highways and they've had to redo the search in one of the corners because the lorries are clipping onto the side of the new tarmac. They've had to redo it. You can see the dips and the cracks in this. So if you're going to be doing it up this end where you've been having a pathway, come on. It's just it's shouting red alarm bells. This is a safety risk. It might be, oh, it's okay on paper, but no, it's not. I just cannot see how this is Mickey risk. I just really can't see it. I'm sorry if you think I'm just being barbaric, but I just really I see this as a massive safety risk. So I'm a lifeguard. I see safety risks all the time. If I see a kid bombing in the pool, that's a safety risk. And this is another alarm bell. Come on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Well.
Yes, thank you. Interesting, isn't it, that we're sitting here discussing an application which was passed by the previous council, but it was the same application. And if it hadn't been for the phosphate intervention, I'm quite sure this site would have been built out. So I know that's not what we've got in front of us, but it is certainly, in my mind, a consideration. And the other one is I'm going back to this balance in between the lack of housing and the considerations, and I think it's quite close in this one. I really do. I think, and after all, it's only an opinion. I know it's a professional opinion, but it's also got to be our opinion on whether we think that this balance has been reached in which favour, and that's our problem, my problem anyway, on this application in front of us. I hear all the arguments of well put about road safety, but my main concern is, are we going to be able to vote in favour of the officer's recommendation because they say that this balance is being tipped in favour because we have no 5-year housing supply? And it's an argument we're going to have to discuss all day today, I'm quite sure. But it's one which worries me, and especially when we have this all, not just Bruton, but all our market towns and also our villages are all getting built on over their allocation under the local plan because of this failure to build enough houses. And it's not this committee's fault, it's just what has happened in the past. And I think it's a terrible shame that we are doing this to all towns, and in fact, quite frankly, not building out where we should do, where our local plans have allocated housing to the amount which is required under the NPPF, and we're not building there. We're building in places like Bruton and many other of our lovely old towns. And I know it's probably not relevant to this chairman, but it's something I feel quite strongly about. But on the evidence given us here, we've got real problems in voting this down, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you. The only one else which is to speak for a moment, I'm going to bring Thomas in just to clarify some of those points you council.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wale. Just a couple of points of principle that might help councillors is that so policy SS1, settlement strategy of the local plan, does identify Bruton as a rural centre. So development is planned to happen here. Hopefully that's helpful, giving an idea of the balance. Secondly, well, I think that's significant. Secondly, in terms of an existing highway hazard, I can call it a hazard, it's not the responsibility of planning or a planning application to resolve an existing problem, but it is the responsibility to consider what the impacts are of new residents in that context. But it's not it's not a specific requirement through this planning application to resolve an existing problem. So hopefully that's helpful to give you an idea of some of the considerations when thinking about making a decision.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Osborne, and we'll be looking for a recommendation.
Paul, I think we're sort of in a rock and a hard place with this one. I can certainly remember when it did come all those years ago, we had a massive argument over the proposed road scheme. We had a serious argument over whether it was actually safe to have such a long priority junction. The risk of side collisions because people could misjudge quite easily. It seems that those have not gone away and won't go away. You're hearing from local people who live here, walk these roads regularly, that they actually won't feel any safer. And yes, we don't expect applicants to solve the problem. That is not their job, and it's not the role of the planning service to solve problems. But what we must ensure is that we are not going to make things worse. And from what I've heard with this, from what I've seen, I am not confident that this will not make things worse. It's a bit like financial services. Performance yesterday is no guarantee of performance tomorrow. And that is the unknown, despite the honeyed words of the experts. And I'm concerned that we have no highways feedback on the independent audit that was put forward by the town council in support of their arguments. This is one of those difficult ones where we are in a rock and a hard place, because Councillor Whale has pointed out the tilted balance and how tilted that balance is against us, because other areas haven't delivered. But there's also a matter of conscience as well. And this is where it is difficult when conscience clashes with planning policy. Which way do you go? Do you prioritise the safety of the town and its citizens over the smooth running of the roads and planning policy, because we have to have a 5-year housing supply, even though we know there's lots of applications that have been approved and are still in the pipeline waiting for their legal approvals, which is not helping matters at all. And so I have a matter of conscience on this one. I think as well, I don't think I could live with myself and as a result, it didn't deliver what it said on the tin. That's where my conscience is taking me. And I think in this case, conscience, and perhaps it shouldn't do, is overriding the planning side of it, is overriding that tilted balance. Because I'm not convinced from what I've heard that it is going to deliver no worsening. Certainly, I don't think it's going to necessarily make things better, but I don't think it's going to deliver no worsening. I think it comes with risk. Risk to pedestrian safety, and also that risk to breach of the Equalities Act.
Thank you. I'd like to think that we debated rather than argued this. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you very much, Chair. I agree with Hollis. There were. I agree with Councillor Osborne. I think this is a matter of conscience. I'm going to suggest, like I always do at these committees, that we consider the people who would benefit from these houses. Over the summer, 63 people applied for one social rented home, which gives you an idea of the scale of the need people for houses in the Bruton area. One social rented home became available on Home Finder Somerset. 63 people applied for it. Only one of those people, one of those families, was successful. In Bruton, there's a huge need for more social housing. So I think this is a matter of conscience. And I think the tilted balance is in favour of this development. I mean, we may be looking at the same narrative, possibly different angles, Councillor Osborne. But I think this pedestrian and road safety scheme is acceptable and will be an improvement to my mind. So I'll be voting for this application, and I'd like to propose that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Patrick, for the proposal. I'm going to Councillor Mrs. Kenton and then back to Councillor Osborne, and then I'll be looking for a second.
So, I'll be really quick, and I wasn't intending on speaking, but a lot of the reports that are coming to us today, a lot of the decisions that we're making have already been made. And this afternoon, I will be speaking very passionately about something in my book. So, I think that we have to be careful when we're trying to listen to people, and I'll include myself in this afternoon. We're listening to the ward member who's representing the public who don't want it. And I think that in order for us to change what's already been decided, we have to be very careful. That's all I'm saying.
Councillor Osborne.
Thank you. I'd also like to point out, and whilst I agree there is a shortage of social housing, we desperately need to see more of it. But the price tag that comes with this one could be very high indeed. However, there is another problem. There's no guarantee that you will get your social housing. Only last month, we had an applicant come to us for a site in Tintinghall saying, pleading viability, pleading poverty, that they could no longer afford to deliver the social housing. And they'd like to have their 30 houses as all market housing. Thank you very much. The system on viability is loaded against us as councillors from saying no, and there's no penalty. when that is probably the very reason you granted that application in the first place. And that is a risk that the developer at some point could turn around, because there's no guarantee that the applicant is actually going to develop it themselves. They will probably sell on to someone else, who will then later turn around and say, sorry, we've got the sums wrong, we're going to drop the affordable housing, because sadly, I've seen it too often where this happens. And we have no sanction, we can't say, well, that's why you tilted the balance, so therefore we're going to rescind your planning permit. We can't do that. There's no sanction, there's no consequence. But yeah, all those people waiting on that housing list have just been betrayed and let down.
Thank you, councillor Osborne. I'm going to come to councillor Patrick, but I would just add the point that we can't stop crying then. Councillor Osborne.
10,000 people on that waiting list, Councillor Osborne, 10,000 people.
Yes, I know.
That makes the point that the Conservative government had 13 years to change the law. I don't intend to become broadcasting anything. But for the sake of the committee, for the sake of the committee, for the sake of the committee, when it comes to viability of applications, we can't expect developers to build homes for free.
No, we're not.
The independent evaluation process is nothing to do with the council. If a developer goes to an independent valuer and says we can no longer afford to build these houses, what do we do? They have a right in law to make profit. They cannot build houses for free. The previous government had plenty of time to change the law and they didn't.
Yeah, just something legally, just to clarify a bit of there, and then I am going to look to see if we have a second for the proposal on the table.
So while councillors are still deliberating, in your minds, where you're actually going, and I heard, councillor Osborne mention going with her conscience. I just wanted to remind members, and I know you know this really, but you do have to make any refusal against the application on material planning grounds.
Absolutely.
Backed by policy, because as Councillor Messer asked earlier, it could go to appeal, if you refuse, that's the applicant's rights to make that appeal. And you could end up with costs against the council because there's no evidence to back your refusal reasons. So just while you're balancing things in your mind, just remember that is.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've had a proposal on the table. Can we now move? Okay, councillor C is now the second. Might have a show of hands for us.
Sorry, so we just need to clarify the proposal at this stage, so you're going with the officer's recommendation, but there is a couple of updates on the section 106, I believe. So if you were going to take the vote now, so Catherine, can you just update the 106 updates? That there was the NHS contribution, change to the play amount, I believe, and it doesn't actually say the P credits are in there, so it should probably mention that the appropriate P credits in relation to the phosphate mitigation.
So apologies for that. So yeah, if you can just run through the recommendations, it's been effectively run through those before we get to it.
Helps, Catherine, it's page 17.
Asking to do it again.
Yes, just to update. With changing. I'm struggling with my screen.
So planning obligations, you've got through the legal agreement, section 106, you've got the travel plan, you've got the 35% affordable housing. You've got financial contributions for play and recreation of 142 odd thousand. You've got the local area for play, the highways improvements works, the package treatment plant implementation and management, and phosphate credits and the pedestrian cycle link along the west boundary, as well as the NHS contributions, which I left off the list, which is over 26,000.
Thank you very much for clarifying the recommendation. Now, we're moving to the vote. Next, show of hands for all of those in favour of the recommendation. Those against? 2. Those abstaining? 2. So that application is approved. Thank you very much. So members, we'll move on to our next application, which is the land along the Broom Road. Something I ask members, of the public, if you're leaving, do so quietly so that we can discuss. And I will ask the planning officer to go through the application. Members of the public, we are still in the meeting, please. Thanks, Unfortunately, we take a 10-year break, really has to be
So application 20-02297 out, Northern Broom Road. The application site lies east of Bruton. The northern element of the site will link to the A359 in the northwest by Cookie Hill. The south boundary that's Brewer Road. The east boundary largely that's open countryside. The northern field to the east is subject of a residential planning application which is pending consideration. The north boundary abuts allotments, the west boundary abuts a residential area, and there's a small play area there as well. So the left image shows you the application site with Bruton Railway Station, and the right image shows you a closer aerial view of the site. This application is in outline only, and consideration here only includes proposed access, principle of up to 65 new dwellings, safeguarding of land for a new GP surgery, public open space, drainage and associated works. All other matters are reserved. No objections have been received from any statutory or non-entities. 243 objections have been received, including from Bruton Town Council, concerned mainly with traffic, highways, flood, sewage, competition countryside, local amenities, ecology, and local housing need. 3 representations have been received in support, raising the need for local family homes and the need for a modern purpose-built healthcare facility to attract and retain staff. Symphony Healthcare have said that it is the only viable opportunity in the last 5 years, and it is financially viable due to the gift of the land and the size of the plot being offered. The main issues here are the principle, the land use parameters proposed, highways, and the planning balance. A full assessment is set out in the committee report. The site lies on the western edge of Bruton and would provide up to 65 new dwellings, together with land for a new GP surgery. Bruton is a rural centre, and this site is identified in the HELA as suitable, available and achievable housing. However, limited weight is afforded to this. The site is considered to be a sustainable location in transport terms, given its proximity to bus and train services and local facilities such as a primary school, restaurants, etc. Policy SS5 sets out a current undersupply of 7, but including the proposal and the adjacent site, which has a Resolute plan, which has been agreed, there would be an oversupply of 118. However, the council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing sites. The scheme would make a significant contribution This is an extract from the proposed parameter plan, which shows in turquoise at the top, the land to be given over to a GP surgery representing only 7% of the site. In the southern half, there would be 47% of the site for residential development, and to the centre and the landscape buffers along the east and south boundaries would be 42% of the site. This shows you the access to the proposed GP surgery on Cuckoo Hill, top left of the image. This is the indicative layout, which is illustrative only. And the right-hand image shows you the illustrative layout of how the access would be off Wyvern Close, leading from Broome Avenue. So the parameters plan shows you a light yellow colour adjacent to or nearest to Wyvern Close, which would have dwellings of up to 1.5 stories. The darker yellow further south would have dwellings of up to 2.5 stories. In terms of the principle of these building heights, in terms of stories, the site slopes down in the southeast corner, so taller buildings would therefore have less visual impact. The mature hedge would be retained to the east and south boundaries, providing some visual screening. The neighbouring dwellings in the area are of 1 and 2 stories, so in principle, this proposal would integrate into the character and appearance of the area. The parameters are therefore at this stage considered acceptable. This application was deferred by the July Planning Committee for further consideration of the highways impacts. 2 road safety audits were submitted in response to this, and the Highway Authority has reviewed these and has no objections, with the following comments. The scheme would be of benefit to pedestrians. The scheme would not increase risks to highway users. The 2 development sites are not interdependent, and the highways improvements would come forward, irrespective of the timings of each scheme. The improvements would be secured via conditions in Section 106 legal agreement. These works would include resurfacing of Darkie Lane, a new footway along the southern side of Broome Road, a new gateway feature east of Darkie Lane, new pedestrian crossings over Broome Road and over Brewlands, and a section of priority work. There would also be interconnectivity between the proposed site and the adjacent sites. So where you have the arrows south of the turquoise area, you would have a crossing on the east side into the proposed new residential development adjacent, and you would have a crossing into the western the section of the site or outside the site where you've got the play area. There's also a vertical yellow arrow which shows there's an existing tarmac footpath which would take people into the new GP surgery. So there is a tilted balance presumption in favour of sustainable development, which applies in this case due to the council's lack of 5-year housing land supply. This scheme would result in a number of benefits, including a significant contribution of new dwellings towards the shortfall, a significant contribution to meeting local need through 23 new affordable housing units, safeguarding of land for a new GP surgery, an on-site local equipped area of play, a public open space and landscaping buffer equating to 42% of the site, biodiversity enhancements, highways improvements, increased footfall to local amenities, economic benefits also from employment opportunities during the construction phase and also the operational phase of the GP surgery, and financial contributions to play of up to 154,000 and to education of up to just over 100,000. It is recognised that Bruton Town Council has upheld its objections and 243 objections have been received. However, there are no objections from any consultee. Overall, the benefits are afforded significant positive weight, while the conflict with SS5 is afforded only minor negative weight. Therefore, the benefits would outweigh any adverse impacts. The scheme is considered to comprise sustainable development and should be granted without delay.
Thank you, Catherine. Then we move to Alistair Parry, who is a local resident. You have 3 minutes to use the microphone.
That good? Just to restate what's just been said, the two adjacent sites are not dependent on one another. My concerns are different to the last application. The last application's entry was directly from the Brewing Road. This one, between the entrance to the development and the Brewing Road is 3 streets away. So my question to you is, how are you going to get people to use all the mitigation you spent the last hour talking about? That it's not the way many people will access it. I've sat by the close. The entrance to this development is the narrowest entrance to any similar development built in Bruceton in the last 50 years. Honestly, it's going to be like driving 90 cars up and down someone's driveway. It's so narrow, it needs double yellow lines outside 12 homes, some of which don't have off-street parking, just to get a bin lorry in. Page 8 of your document for today suggests kicking that issue into the long grass until after construction. Well, do you need a bin lorry to get in there or not? The refuse collection companies say they will only do it if it's double yellowed. I'd really like you to discuss that today, please, not wait until it's a foregone conclusion. It's not in the interest of those who are going to suffer to do this. The homes in question are sheltered and social housing, which you've all said you'll hear about today. There are always blue badges. I've lived around the corner for over 30 years. There's always blue badges where those double yellows are going to be. There's 2 at the moment, but they're always have been there. My vulnerable neighbours are not a technical detail to defer. Please can you all think of them today? I parked in the entrance to Wyvern Close with 4 different sat-nav systems. I put in the places I go and my neighbours go to work for recreation and to shop. Anywhere north of the town tells you to turn right and avoid the road. It tells you to go down Eastfield. This committee has already decided that Eastfield is not suitable for further traffic in SSDC days. The chair visited during the application for the Cookham Hill development. He saw the state of things and made us build an entrance from the main road. So please don't go back on to see that this committee has already made. Access should be via Broom Road. Hands up who's read the 300-page transport plan. Oh, applicant hasn't put it under either. I'll save you 299 pages. Go to Appendix E. Actually, Alan Muir, the leader of the Council of Planning Planting, says it's not acceptable. And I agree. Appendix E, when they assessed the entrance to Eastfields, where traffic's going to go, their software couldn't accept an entrance so narrow, so they assumed it was wider. Well, here's the news, it isn't. This isn't a game. Please, can you call out these assumptions? I agree with the Planning Committee that Eastfield is unsuitable for further traffic. I agree with the applicant that Eastfield isn't wide enough. Please look at how people are really going to access these houses and don't get sucked into thinking it's the Broom Road. If you want people to access it by the Broom Road, put an entrance in the Broom Road. I don't let you do that, so please reject it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I please call Mike Brownlow?
I've just checked that the photos that I asked to include are ready.
They can't be shared, they can't be shared on the screen, but they have been shared with the committee.
I think. Yeah. Well, the photos showed a population between which I to talk about.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
North of Broom Road is the largest of 3 new proposed developments at the east end of Broom. There's also the possibility that many more houses might be coming to the west of the town in the near future. Those of us who live in the centre of Broome are extremely worried by the cumulative effect these will have on Broome, because Broome has traffic problems that marked out as a special case. Unlike other towns mentioned in the report as having mass housing potential, such as Martock, Ilminster, or South Petherton, Broome doesn't have a bypass nearby. Instead, we have an A road running to our historic centre, an A road completely inadequate for the task.
as you'd seen in the photos, the A359, the north of the Broom Road development site is just a few hundred yards further up the road. The road I'm talking about, Populate Street, is just over 14 feet wide at its narrowest points. This is an A road with traffic flowing in both directions. Many of its pavements are less than the width of my shoulders. It's important for you to understand that virtually all the traffic travelling between Yeovil and Wincanton to the west and Frome and Trowbridge to the east has to travel through the centre of the town using this road. It's incredibly narrow. There are no practical alternatives, and the vehicles belonging to the houses in this development feed directly onto the A359, adding to what is already a very congested driving condition. There's scarcely enough room for two small cars to pass each other, let alone two large ants, or as in the photograph, the car and the lorry. The last of the photographs I showed was looking towards the town with the development behind us. The vehicles, I showed a vehicle mounting the pavement. It was a large tractor in that case with its vans, its lorries. It happens on a minute by minute basis. And it passes within millimetres of our houses. The high street is round the corner and it contains Bruton's historic centre, including unique medieval Saxon buildings, all of which are in danger of increased traffic. And to the right of the tractor was Cooper Street, another small road, even smaller than Populate Street. And that's the road that leads to the primary school. So dropping off and picking up times are absolutely chaotic at times like that. Populate Street is the main access route for many of us who walk to the high street and the schools, and you can guess the sort of dangers that these traffic conditions pose. The other big problem is Brook doesn't have adequate parking in or near the centre of town, and we're unlikely to have it in the future because there simply isn't the land available to build one. Our high streets are always congested, and as this development is a certain distance away from the centre of town, people are likely to pop into the high street by car.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to say it's going to make.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Can I next call Ellie Malone from Symphony Healthcare?
Yeah, so my name is Emily Malone. I'm here today representing Symphony Healthcare Services, the organisation responsible for running Bruton GP surgery. Bruton's surgery is currently one of the top 3 most undersized GP practices in Somerset, measured by the ratio of patient numbers to available floor space. This means that at present it is 162% oversubscribed. Since the practice integrates into Symphony Healthcare Services in 2019, we have worked closely with local residents and the parish council to explore options for improving healthcare provision in the area. Over the past 4 years, we have thoroughly assessed various possibilities, including converting existing buildings and acquiring other plots of land. Unfortunately, every alternative has proven unviable due to factors such as location, financial feasibility, or the unavailability of different options. This undersized facility is not just a space issue, it directly impacts our ability to recruit and retain a skilled workforce needed to deliver consistent, high-quality care. The demand for in-person appointments is rising steadily, reflecting changes in patient needs and healthcare delivery, with roughly 60% of clinical team appointments taking place face-to-face. But it is important to also note that virtual appointments do not require any less space, as our GPs need a consultation space whether people can see in person or by telephone. Bruton Surgery's current facilities are simply not equipped to meet this increasing demand, and a modern, purpose-built healthcare facility is essential to ensure that we can provide the capacity and environment necessary for high-quality face-to-face care. Across Somerset, GP vacancies have been a persistent challenge, particularly in rural areas like Bruton, where demand far exceeds supply. At Bruton Surgery, the shortage of clinical staff has been especially acute, with a heavy reliance on temporary locum doctors, which has an impact on both the continuity of care and the long-term stability of the service. A modern, purpose-built healthcare facility would also transform our ability to attract and retain excellent staff, addressing the staffing challenges that have long affected our community. The proposed development at Land North of Broome Road offers a unique opportunity to achieve this. The site is ideally located, central to many of our patients, and provides good pedestrian and vehicular access. Crucially, the financial viability of this new facility is supported by the generous allocation of land included in the proposals, making it the only realistic opportunity that we have had in the past 5 years. This is an opportunity that we do not want to miss. On behalf of Bruton Surgery and Symphony Healthcare Services, I strongly support this application and urge you to approve today. It presents a vital chance to secure the future of primary care in Bruton and to provide the kind of modern, high-quality healthcare facility that the community so clearly needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I move on to Ewan Jones from Bruton Town Council.
Thank you, Chair. As stated, this is a very different application. The committee has potentially just exposed the residents of Somerset to judicial review of process errors in the handling of the asset proposals of the previous site. This site is a victim of the National Planning Policy Framework, which I referenced previous discussions, was introduced by the coalition government. Bruton has a desperate need for a surgery. Where double capacity is top of the Somerset priority list. The site for this is the bottom where the houses are proposed, which provides level access to the town for our older population. We've made this point to the developers multiple times, but they've not listened. Instead, we're presenting with a cookie cutter development in a county that's declared a climate emergency, gas housing, car dependency, and risk of flooding the site that has just been approved to the south. This is a very different developer. Acorn, the developer of the previous one, which the town council has worked with for years, planned to build the houses. What we're faced here is a planning consultant who intends to sell it to the highest bidder, with a landowner, unlike the Vineys, who does not want to talk to the town and refused all offers of talking to the town. This is where your social housing will not get built. We respect, no, this site, by the way, was in the town plan sites where the community would be interested in development. The town council would like to work with developers to develop an acceptable scheme.
Thank you, Ewan. Next, I'd like to invite Lizzie Trimdell, who is one of the board members.
Thank you, Chair. So here I am going for the second application in Bruton on the opposite side of this small country lane, Brougham Lane. Many of the concerns, the pressure that the previous scheme applies to this one too. Not only will another 130 odd cars be coming into and out of our town at times unnavigable pinch points of Port Lake Street, Library Corner and Coombe Street, but additionally more traffic will then be moving through the town and up the Broom Road to access a proposed doctor's surgery. It is not walkable for most of the town, especially if they are ill, and the bus only goes halfway up the hill. I noted with interest the previous application made much of the need of the surgery for this application in order for the surgery from the second application to serve the new residents from both. It's a coincidence then to find both applications coming before us as a pair. The joint schemes of these before us isn't entirely consistent with deciding each on their own merits, I feel. It's not the first time we've been promised a new surgery if we agree to housing. The proposed surgery at Cubis never materialised. So why should we, which will also have to be commenced within 3 years or applied for within 5 to prevent the land being returned to the developer? This can't be a positive benefit. And there are many hurdles for this surgery to cross through first, and we are not agreeing to the building of the surgery at this committee. 15 years ago, permission was granted for 68 houses at Cuckoo Hill in Bruton, a condition placed with bollards between the estate and Eastfield Road to prevent cars moving from Cuckoo Hill through Eastfield for consideration of safety of people who lived there. Nothing's changed in terms of harm from extra vehicle movements, but now it seems okay to have 60 homes and associated vehicle movements. Why is this now okay? Finally, it's my understanding that this application for houses includes a consideration for access to the GP surgery, and I must talk about this. The bend that you turn left on to get to the surgery is known locally as Crash Corner. I've crashed there myself. Someone's reversed into me, by the way. So the Cuckoo Hill estate is not suitable for all the extra car movements as it has inadequate parking for the homes, meaning the estate is always affected by on-road parking all day and even worse from 4 p.m. onwards. Bear in mind the surgery will be open until at least 6 p.m. It won't be safe for drivers or pedestrians. So with no guarantee this surgery will be built, the unsuitability of the estate route to take surgery traffic, the concerns of traffic impacts on Eastfield and the Brew Roads, Close and Avenue, the statement in the previous planning application that came in July that this will result in slight harm to the settlement hierarchy, and the pressure on our narrow road network means that I would urge the committee to refuse this application.
Thank you, Kirsty. Can we please move on to Catherine Else from Fairmont?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. My name is Catherine Else from Fairmont Planning, and I present this application for 65 homes and land for the new GP surgery due for approval. Bruton is a vibrant town that has significant challenges meeting demand for high quality market and affordable housing. It is a sustainable settlement that needs to be recognised. This proposal represents an opportunity to address some of these needs, both in terms of delivering affordable housing, market homes, and a new GP surgery. After the 4 years we have spent securing phosphate credits and refining the application, we are pleased that the recommendation is for approval today, recognising the process the applicant has gone through patiently. Over this time, all technical matters have been resolved, involving independent assessment of all of the access points, with support from the Highway Authority and their safety audit team. The design of the access and the improvements we propose should not have to respond to speeding drivers or to obstruction of the highway. And additionally, I would just like to point out that this site has an alternative pedestrian route. This is via the Eastfield and Frome Road access. This will provide a level, safe pedestrian route to the town centre that existing residents are using today. The proposal will also provide significant social, economic and environmental benefits, including 23 affordable homes, ecological enhancement, an over provision of open space, new public linkages, infrastructure funding through community infrastructure levy, and also the land for the new GP surgeries. As Simply Healthcare put to you, we've been working with them now for considerable years to make sure that this land will make their new GP surgery deliverable. This delivers the only viable site within Bruton, so it can ensure the delivery of surgery, which is vital new infrastructure. In addition, the homes that we've presented today in the Satellite application, we've promised to provide solar panels, air source heat pumps, EV charging, rainwater harvesting, and dormer bungalows, all things that are not there at the moment. The proposed development corresponds with the eastern expansion area suggested by the Council for Bruton in the local plan review. The plans include a wide road and footpath upgrades, and the focus on the area development is the south of the site. This will improve access and create better pedestrian connections to the GP surgery to the north as well. I urge the committee to consider the long-term benefits the development will bring to Bruton, and also recognise that there are no demonstrative reasons for refusal, and that development is policy compliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I now ask the members if they have any questions for the officer, any points that they should clarify from the questions at all? Do you have anything you want to add there, Catherine, at all? Okay, so points of clarification, Councillor Ware.
Can I have clarified, please, the having a photograph of the proposed, access point, to this site. I wasn't clear. Yeah, that's there, but have the officer got a, we usually get pictures of it, I don't think we've seen them yet.
We pop the pictures up on the screen of the act.
You just need to screenshot.
This is the submitted plan of Wyvern Close and the access to the site. And the plan, because it's submitted for highways purposes, its dimensions, so it shows that Wyvern Close is 6 metres wide and has footways to the north and south of it, which are 2 metres wide. This also shows the visibility displays, and it shows a proposed sort of extension of this road into the site, which maintains the existing width. So I think that John can speak.
Yeah, if I may, Jeff, I had memories of this application before. At some stage, and I can't remember when, and we definitely had, pictures of a very, suburban estate road, which is the road we are being asked to give access to. And, that plan is fine, but it doesn't give the picture. I just wondered if we got that. If we haven't got it, we'll have to go on our memory. Thank you.
Do we have a photograph that's been taken of the access road there to?
Yeah, but it might take me a while to find it.
If you can find it, it would be,
If we can leave Catherine looking for that, are there any other points of clarification?
we need it.
Catherine's looking for that. Councillor Osborne?
Yes, please. I think what happened to show, it has been raised about in order to create the widths, you would be putting double yellow lines in some parts. For, well, or to enable easier access. Could you just show where those yellow lines are going to go, please?
Yeah, I'm going to come back to that with Ron because we're not in public question time here. To give Catherine a chance to do that. Councillor Best, did you have a question as well?
It was really clarification. I know on the application it said safeguarding the land for the GP surgery. But we've learned from experience in the past of one site, this was in Merriott, outside of my own crew town, that didn't get it through. Can it be conditioned that if permission is given, the land could be transferred to Symphony as a part of it, rather than relying on it being part of the structure?
I think the section 106 legal agreement specifies that if the surgery isn't implemented within 5 years, that there's a financial contribution that goes to the ICB, which is care board.
Which doesn't actually help them with allocating a surgery or expanding.
I think it would be a decision of the NHS or ICB if they decide they can't build there.
Okay, do you want to come back, Catherine, on the questions about double yellow lines and the picture of red?
So we've got Google Street View now, which is an interactive view of the road, which is easily finding my photos.
I thought, CEO, stepping on this one from the highway point of view, obviously as the committee have seen, the applicants put forward a continuation of the existing estate road, as you can see from there on the screen. The Wyvern Close and all those other sundries, having checked our system, they would double check again to find sanity, is the fact that this is all adopted highway already by the Highway Authority right up to the boundary. So this will be a continuation of the existing highway, and if Pat could just zoom in as much as she could, just click forward then. As you can see, there's no battle strip. The road itself when we deal with other developments of the similar like in and around the county, it's very much you can see that there was an intention that this would continue on to serve houses at another set point in time. So from our point of view, the design is considered to be appropriate in line with the State Roads Guidance, Design Guidance documentation that we published at the start of last year. In terms of the question relating to double yellow lines, obviously that would be through a traffic regulation order. That could be secured through the section 106 agreement, and that could be discussed with the applicant in terms of the extent of what is required in terms of that traffic regulation order, if it's deemed to be appropriate.
Thank you. Are there any other points of clarification? If not, I'll move straight to questions. So we'll go to question. Clarification.
Sorry, I'm a little hung up on the safeguarding of the surgery site. I don't recall having seen a specific boundary, it's just a condition provided the planning permission is granted for the next 5 years. Is the transfer of the land involved a private matter between the NHS and the applicants, or are we attempting to actually say it'll be this many hectares of land sort out precisely where between themselves?
So I just found my note in the committee report. So it would be a legal agreement, section 106, obligation. The land safeguarded for the GP surgery, which is the turquoise bits on the parameter plan, which would be an approved plan anyway. It would be transferred to the NHS Somerset Integrated Care Board upon approval of the application.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So we'll move to questions. My apology, Councillor Pound. We'll go Councillor Pound and Councillor Patrick.
No worries, no cheating going in there. Can I just get a question? I want to know, is there any evidence of that highways visiting the site? Because I haven't seen it, and I don't think the town council have seen any evidence of the highways actually physically attending the site. Thank you.
Tom?
As part of the application, the officer would have visited the site, so Mr. Garland, who visited the site when the application was initially received, he may have gone back to visit the site again to refresh himself, but as part of the officer, he would have gone to the site and you looked at the site.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in two minds about this one. I really like the principle developing here, but I think the access is terrible. It really, really worries me that we're going to set this up and it will be forever. And it'll be miserable for everyone who lives here, everyone who accesses this site. It'll be miserable. I don't think the double yellow lines go far enough. If you look at the diagram, the parking issues are at the end of the existing one lines, and the double yellow lines don't go that far. They also, at the junction, the T-junction with Blue Bruce and people place, forgive me, I do know this very well, but nothing else than not so. The yellow lines go there as well, and that's going to push cars away to other places. I think we're just going to create a lot of problems here. This access really worries me. I don't know where we go from there, but just want to get my points over the kids.
Is there a question there?
Oh, we're not on the debate.
Be relevant. Okay, I thought you were going to slide a question in at the end of that. Okay, Councillor and then Councillor Round.
I'll slide a question in. And on the roads that are leading to this access, can I ask, are they all, albeit with double yellow lights, are they?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, the highway is adopted by the council, so they would have been designed and built to the correct widths that were appropriate for that designation of road. So that would have been formed part of that request.
Thank you, Councillor Round.
Yeah, just for my information, can we go back to the strike map and point out where the already approved application is in relation to this application? I'm not. You said to the east, I think, but can it just be pointed out?
Sorry, do you mean the one we just discussed this morning, or the other one I mentioned?
You mentioned another one. Yeah. Well, and the morning one might be nice, actually.
Is everyone happy with what they've seen on this road before Catherine changed the screen again?
Yes. Okay. Happy is not a good word.
Okay.
Right, good.
So at the bottom of the southern boundary of the site
Yep.
is Broom Road.
Yep.
So the scheme we discussed earlier is the south side of the Broom Road at the bottom of this red
Yes.
polygon. To the very top right, northeast corner of this red polygon, is a big field, and that is proposed development site to be considered separately.
That's above the proposed site for the doctor's surgery then. Is that correct?
It's east. I'll change.
That's all right.
So, the right-hand image is a screenshot of the adjacent site indicative outline.
Right, thank you.
And it's on the right-hand side of it's the field on the right-hand side of this scheme, on the left-hand image.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further questions, we move into the debate.
Just got one left. It's about sorry, I've just got a question left. It's about access to the surgery. Did I hear correctly that this is going to be accessed through Eastfield? And you're going to be coming in sort of into, I guess, that top corner? Because again, probably come to it in debate, but is that the only way to access the surgery up through Eastfield? Yes. Or will you be coming in through Wyndham Close, which has just had concerns raised over it?
Coming back on the minimums question, as I say, on what's being shown on their head, you can see that the vehicle access will come in from, I believe is Eastfield to the top of vehicle access. Now join on to Cricket Hill at the existing junction at the top. As we've also described through the permeability for pedestrians and cyclists, the previous question related to the yet to be considered site to the east. As you can see that there is permeability for pedestrians and cyclists as well, to come from the north to south in relation to that and also cut through. So vehicular access is only proposed, as you can see from that entrance at the top there, whilst pedestrian and cycle access can be considered from coming along the south as well as part of the development.
Thank you. I'm going to move us into the debate now. I'm just like Councillor Power.
Back to say you probably be sick. I'd just like to start with the access points, and I completely agree with my colleagues there. With the amount of traffic that's going to go through there, you also mentioned a play area. Adding more traffic next to a play area, that's another alarm bell that's ringing in my head. The access, I just feel like I'm all for, affordable housing, but you never know with this application, it might not be confirmed. It's not 100% guaranteed that we're going to get any doctor's surgery. But one thing that I can confirm, if this site is approved, that the traffic measures will go up. The more traffic will be going through there, the accident risk is higher. I just want to get some more clarification of what you're actually going to be doing to, protect the residents that are going to be living there. I mean, you think of the access points, the cars are parked along there. Bruton has got no parking. It's so hard to park in Bruton as it is. let alone taking people's parking outside their driveway. Like I said, I'm lost for words again.
Thank you. Councillor Patrick?
I don't see how we can reconcile this application with policy TA5. I just think access here is inappropriate. It has really very poor consequences for.
Hold on a second, sorry, in fact,
There's a,
Councillor Sherwood, can I ask you to take a seat?
Sorry, yeah.
I think looking at this in the round, Chair, if I can carry on. I just think the impacts on the local highway network are insurmountable. I'm minded to refuse this.
Councillor Ware?
I also agree with my colleagues' comments. The access to this is through, not just Wyvern Close, but through what is a purpose-built housing estate. And they're housing estate roads. This isn't them. And now you're talking about putting a doctor's surgery, so people from all over the area, not just Britain, but the surrounding area, are going to have to come down. It's totally unacceptable, in my view, as an access to this site. And I would be supporting refusing it.
I'm afraid I agree with what's been said before. I also am aware, and I think that Eastlands, in relation to another application, was deemed a sort of unsuitable route. When you sort of look at it from an aerial view, it's just a rabbit warren in a maze. And to put on much more extra traffic, it's also at one end of the route, and it's not even central. So people aren't going to walk, and if you're feeling less than 100%, which is why you're going to the doctors in the first place, or you're having therapy or treatment, you're more than likely, even if you don't drive yourself there, you will be having somebody else to drive you there. So it's not going to sort of be walking and cycling territory. And in addition, we do have concerns about the narrowness of the access into a 65 housing development. So those reasons, if Councillor Patrick was proposing, I would be happy to second overturning this application.
We've not had a proposal yet. We're going to go to Councillor Best, and then I'm going to come back to points of clarification.
Yeah, I agree. I'm afraid this is a traffic nightmare.
Yeah.
I think with the double yellow lines, you're going to shunt other cars in place. You'll get parking all over and all over the area. If you're going to shovel the doctor's surgery traffic into it, it's just going to overwhelm it. And I've seen that in many occasions where these developments are overwhelmed by cars. So I'm in agreement of the fact that I'm through to them.
Okay, I'm going to go to John and then Thomas. For clarification.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Apologies for a point of clarification, just to say that it's my fault, I'm afraid. The doctor's surgery will be served from the Cuckoo Hill junction to the north, which was served not necessarily through the Eastlands, so that's my apology on that one. In relation to traffic increase and the numbers that we'll be doing debate.
Also, could you pop the map up and show us where that junction is, so that we can see exactly where you're going?
That's not what it's looking at.
That's all good through.
So just got a map up on the screen now for members. As you see, the doctor's surgery will come through where the two cursors indicating there, through that section there, and then it helps to the Cuckoo Hill, onto Cuckoo Hill through that junction there. And that's called Cuckoo Hill. So again, that's my apologies for this. There'll be nothing past the clay area through there to the south, and then obviously as we just said that the access to the residential part line close along there, and then they'll come out through Avenue to the south. Could I just provide one other point of clarity in terms of traffic movements? I appreciate, having looked through the transport assessment, they've said that there what 3 times are going to be in terms of 34 in the AM and 32 movements in the PM.
this equates to about one additional movement every 2 minutes in relation to that, just for the benefit of speed in relation to traffic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to clarify, we've heard from, I think, John, the council's highway officer. Just to help you in your deliberations, council's members here, you've clearly raising concerns about, and understandably, highway safety. Understand that, but just reminding you, we do think the council's highway officer has identified there's no severe impact. So from a policy terms, that's what we're looking at. You do, if you've clearly articulated concerns about highway safety, it's understandable. So if you feel that it's not clear at this stage, there is an option for deferral. Just making you aware of that. Just mindful of that on the basis that we do have very clear consultation response from the Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just remind everyone in the room that we have listened to everyone and that I ask to respect the officers as well, please. Councillor Beth and Councillor Steve.
Can I just have confirmation then, there is a solid boundary between the land of the doctor's surgery and the development site, so there's no access from one to the other that could multiply traffic going one direction or the other?
Cars,
Yeah, in other words, the doctor's site is on its own and there is no link with the other side.
there is no, not even a pedestrian crossing between, because at the bottom of the site, you've got the residential area, in the middle, you've got your public open space, and then that turquoise bit at the top was the GP surgery, and it's a hard boundary.
Councillor Steve.
Could I ask you to expand out the street view for Cookery Hill at the top? It's my consent that I would like to know the nature of the movement that were assessed in the highways assessment. Because to my mind, that is an extremely constrained manoeuvring space for what will be two-way traffic going to and from. But it's coming from the main road. The junction with the main road comes in for a short run, and then there's a sharp corner. Which will be the absolute. If you give that junction, then turn around. I'm concerned that you've got two-way traffic to and from a doctor's surgery. That's the norm. There's normally several car parks at any doctor's surgeries. I'm also concerned that it's east-west facing the street, which means that during winter, wintry conditions, it's unlikely to defrost because it will be in a permanent shadow. And so you've got a mixture of accessibility issues there. I'm wondering what exactly the highways safety assessment considers. Does it consider the specific use of a doctor's surgery and the nature of people going to and from it?
Yeah, certainly just, I think, as I say, from our point of view, the Highway Authority, when we're carrying out these assessments, we look at the application holistically in terms of what's being proposed. Obviously, from our point of view, we look at the point of access and how that would be moved through as part of that process.
Hold on a second. Can I ask members of the public to please refrain and read the bit for a second, please? Thank you.
Apologies, Chair. As I say, what I was saying is the fact that when it comes to assessments of these applications, we looked at it in a holistic manner. So we've looked at the access, as Catherine's talked about in terms of the residential, but the audit process would have looked at the access for the doctor's surgery as well, and how that links through the estate, taking into account obviously its use, what would that happen in terms of residents and movements through there. As it's been reported to committee and members can report that the officers put together, that the Highway Authority is fairly broadly satisfied that this scheme is acceptable in the highway plans.
Thank you. Councillor Power.
Thank you, Chair. As my colleague also said, that corner is actually called Crush Corner. So, that's another point to give. Also, I'd like to know if the highways officer did attend, what time of day did he do his report on? Because every time I drive past that area, it is fairly manic. And also, where are the residents going to park on Cuckoo Hill? Because they're still going to park on the side of the road. They haven't got, accessible parking properly. So cars will also be blocking the roads to be pinch points. So it's still it's a crash corner. Sorry, a crash corner.
Thank you. I'm gonna, I love the way you keep repeating that, but I can't ask the officers to tell you what time they came because he's not here, but I can ask them to answer the question about where residents are parked.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. It's always a difficult question when people talk about parking and on-highway parking. Obviously, as you know, the developer, when they brought this site forward and provided suitable parking for all the residents within line of the Sunset parking strategy, that wasn't published at that time. Obviously, I have to take into account that residents do like to park outside their properties. That's fact of life. We all live in states and roads where people do park on the carriageway. We can't legislate for people parking on the carriageway. However, the highway widths are there and appropriate for vehicles to pass. Therefore, obviously, there might be a case that some vehicles may need to wait, pause while they pass a car that's parked on the highway. But necessarily speaking, it's able to access that site in a reasonable and safe manner, irrespective of vehicles being parked on the carriageway.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Osborne and then I'm going to be looking for a recommendation.
Yes, Chairman, I mean, you've made reference to Eastfield. You're stating that people are going to access the surgery from Cuckoo Hill, and that seems an equally unsatisfactory way in for some of the reasons given. But how are you going to stop people from accessing via Eastfield if that is not the way you want them to come? Because you can't actually stop people from using the highway if they're up to date and legally entitled to do so. People could still come that way. Well,
Yes, in reference to that question, just to answer it, there is bollards between at the end of Eastfield as it goes up, as the end, and it's only passable for pedestrians and cyclists to interchange 3 and 2. So there is no clear access through for vehicles to move through. So hence the surgery can only be proposed to be got from Cuckoo Hill Junction. Sorry.
Thank you. If I was not going to use the same acronym.
No. I've got a new one now. They've actually removed the bollards. They have been removed quite frequently. So if they're removed, it's uncontrollable. They get removed, and we've got this. Residents have said that those bollards get removed. So that is literally an access point for people to go through. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no new points that people wish to debate, then I'm looking for a proposal. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to add to what I was saying, if it would help councillors, make a decision, independent review to inform decision. As a planning, so I feel more comfortable with that, given what the ROs stated.
Yes, Pam.
I'd like to go for a refusal, please, on the safety risks of the entrances in and the access. I'll try for a proposed partial surveillance. Yeah, it doesn't comply with policy. TA5, thank you.
SC.
I don't believe that's yet been seconded. I would prefer to propose that we defer for a more in-depth analysis, particularly with respect to the location, the ability of existing residents to park, and the location through the adequacy of the road access for service levels, and given that there is on-street parking at the moment, I would prefer an independent view on that. I view the public service aspects of the GP surgery very important, and particularly given the live landing route is not a flat face, and we have to consider all circumstances, not cause of access for GP surgery. And I'm also a bit concerned about about what design provisions would be made for the housing estate at the lower part. So all sorts of concerns which are along the highways but I've not heard anyone, professional advice has been given. It's the credibility of that advice and the believability of that advice, which I think we need, I need to be happier about, because at the moment I'm looking at that junction and I'm going, yeah, I want to know how you've analysed that, because I'm not seeing a yes, and I'm not willing to go for no, because I don't think it's clearly unsafe or clearly safe. I think it's stuck in the middle.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to councillor Patrick, then councillor Best, and then I will come back to councillor Power as he put the original motion in to see if he wishes to amend or change that. If he doesn't, then we'll be looking for a second.
Thank you, Chair. There may be some constitutional wrangling just about to happen. Because I was minded to refuse this. I don't think refusing on just TA5 alone is good enough. I would not like to draw a line on this with a refusal. I would like to see the scheme delivered with safe access. So I'm going to second Councillor C. Therefore, the constitutional wrangling may begin. I don't know what that means.
This motion go forward to that. So I believe it's the next councillor Power, but councillor Power hasn't been seconded yet. But I'm going to go councillor Best, and then I'm going to take some advice in my right ear whilst I'm listening to councillor Best.
Can I just throw in a late question? Has there been an indicative design of the new surgery, and how many parking spaces have been allocated, if that's new?
So the consideration of the access to the GP surgery is in principle only. There is no submission of any technical details for the GP surgery access. When that application comes forward, it will be a separate application, and it will have parking for patients, etc., and will be assessed separately from this application. So in terms of this current application that we're considering now, the access to the GP surgery is only being considered in principle.
Yeah, because one of the issues I have is obviously the storage of cars going in would bear a bigger relevance on the access we're talking about now, rather than trying to park cars. So I didn't know whether there was anything there.
Yes, so if and when an application for a GP surgery on that site comes in, it will have all of its transport assessments submitted, and then all of that will be assessed then at that stage.
Thank you. Is it a new point, councillor Ware?
It's a clarification point. Can I ask, did councillor C make a either amendment or counter proposal? Because I wasn't too sure. I think he said we should defer this for an independent survey. Was that correct?
Councillor C made a proposal to defer. Councillor Powers made a proposal to refuse. And unless there's something new, councillor, I'm going to go back to councillor.
Sorry, what was the deferment for? That's Paramount.
For the independent review.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Osborne, is it something new?
No, it isn't anything before, because having seen how independent the last traffic audit was, I want reassurance that it was genuinely independent of all parties. However, I do have very real concerns over this, so I am prepared to support councillor Power in his proposal to return application.
Okay, so can I just clarify, councillor Osborne, that you've seconded councillor Power's proposal, and can I then ask councillor Power to confirm his proposal?
Yes, I am prepared to.
Perfect. Thank you. If I could just ask councillor Power to confirm this wording of that proposal.
You might need a couple of minutes.
Chair, am I correct in thinking?
I'm just going to do my.
Can we have some minutes just to?
I can give you one. I'll give you 1 minute.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. I'm going to read, I'm going to read a passage from the planning committee's terms of reference. We seem to have, as Councillor Patrick predicted, well, I'm not saying it was a bit of a page. So, item 4.26, voting will be either recommendation as it appears in the written report, including any update report, or as amended by the case officer verbally in the meeting, or subject to A and B below the amendment to the recommendation as proposed by unitary council and committee or committee. Or the alternative proposal, where there is more than one amendment proposed, there will be a vote voted on in the order in which they are proposed to second it, but that's an amendment. Yeah. Okay, so unfortunately, Councillor Pound, because Councillor Steve's proposal was seconded prior to yours, it has to be heard first. So if Councillor now, I'm not a constitutional expert on this, I can only read what's in, what the legal officer is giving me. So by following those rules, I have to take Councillor Steve's proposal first. If that falls, I'll then come back to yours. So the proposal on the table, Councillor Steve, may I just briefly summarise.
So just to summarise, what I proposed was that we adjourn for an independent. No, I think I've got a person. Defer for an independent assessment and review of the safety, particularly with regard to the access for the doctor surgery, given the availability of alternative parking, in order that we can see a safe, clear compliance with policy TA5, the second part, which is the inclusive, convenient self-access for all, by all modes. Because I'm not picking that up at the top of the site. That was a bank assessment.
And that's seconded by councillor Patrick. So we have a proposal in the second on the table for deferral. I have two very quick questions and then I'm also going to hand over to Thomas. So the first question was councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit confused. I can only go on what has been put before me on this report. Are we saying this deferral is questioning the ability of the highway officers, professional people who put in this report? I know it's got flaws. I understand the local members' concern. I just need to understand myself how to vote. I can only go on what's in front of me.
Yeah.
I'm not going away from that. It's like, you can understand my point.
Yeah, that
So are we deferring this to question professional highways officers' judgment already?
To confirm,
It's to confirm and to gain a further independent performance. Yeah. That's Mrs. Kennedy.
Mine's similar, so like, we've always been told you vote on what's in front of you. What's in front of me is been prepared by a planning officer, has had advice from a highways officer, of which neither of those am I an expert in. But I'm going to say to them that despite the fact that you prepared all that, I want more, and we do seem to differ a lot. And I seem to be sitting in the same applications time after time again.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And it is for you to make that decision and vote accordingly. So, I'm going to go to Thomas. Can we cap the land and take the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Just want to clarify, the councillor C, just in detail about the specifics. There needs to be reminded what material considerations are, the implications that are outlined. The access to the GP surgery isn't a matter being considered in this actual proposal. It's to clarify that.
Yeah, Councillor.
I'm sorry, I'm afraid, given the nature of this application, including Section 106 agreement, we would have to, I appreciate there is no planning application for a surgery, but because it's one of the material conditions that we weigh in the public benefit balance for this site, we have to look specifically at whether the route that is proposed, whether the access is proposed, is suitable for use as a surgery now, because that is the benefit being offered, and it is intrinsic to this, even though there isn't a surgery in place.
Okay, unless this is something new, because we are literally going around the houses.
It is. No, this is, I believe, the original motion or amendment, but B&C mentioned both accesses to be, and we seem to be concentrating on the doctor access. And I'm almost certain you said, did you not read it? Both access. And I just want to make sure, because you went on to the doctors, and this is not just the doctors, this is both access.
That's correct. Yes, correct. Okay, so we've got a proposal on the table and a seconder. I have a show of hands for deferral on those for that independent mode. 5, those against. 1, those abstaining. 4. Okay, so that application will be deferred to come back for that independent report. Moving on to agenda item 6, land at Camden Farm, Tilbury Road, Headsbridge. Without an application will matter reserved for 52 dwelling. And I believe that the comment to take this application.
Check, that's correct. Just 2 seconds break.
It will literally be 2 seconds. We have 22 minutes left in this session, and any more than 2 minutes, and I will start the meeting without you. So you have 2 minutes. It's gone over to I'm sorry. We will
I think it's good to explain mine.
Can I ask members to start making their way back to the table, please?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll start this application, which is the landing town so fast Strawbridge Road, Kent Street, and I will hand you over to Thomas for the presentation.
Thank you, Cal. Just, I've had to use my own laptop on phone.
Right.
Just give me a second while I'm, getting it on the screen and save my notes at the same time. So please bear with me for a second. See if this works.
Excellent, thank you for your multitasking skills.
Right, so what I'll do is I'll John between.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, you. So this is a planning application for, two houses at, London Farm, comes in Henstridge. It's this site. The business students are moving between the two. It's 2.3 hectares. That's not a particularly good plan, is it? Let me move on to the next one. That makes more sense. There's 2.3 hectares. apologies, I should go take a step back. It's 52 houses, it's an outline application, so it's just access. All of the matters, landscaping, etc., are reserved for everything that's approved. It's the reserved matters for a future application. It's 2.3 hectares or 4.5 acres. On site, there's on the west side there, the little area protruding on the west and the left there. There's currently a single dwelling and a large barn served from the access at Stalbridge Road. The site there you see, it's grazed, it's pasture, and it gently slopes to the east, southeast. The agricultural land classification is 3B, and the flood zone is 1, which means it's not at risk of flooding. Proposal is the recommendation, Oxford recommendations that planning permission is granted, subject to prior completion of section 106 and the agreement. I'll go into some of the details in a moment on that. That is all in the report. The applicants agree to all the requests that have been made for section 106, and there are detailed planning conditions also in the report. I won't go into them in great detail, but I'm sure if members of councillors are concerned about any in particular, we can discuss them. And the proposals that the decision, the fine details of the 106 and conditions is then delegated to head of and in consultation with the area chair. Back to the site, you can see the access onto Stalbridge Road. I'm aware of, again, we have highway safety issues there, and I'll go into that in detail later. I do have a picture that I can show that will give you an idea, but I'm sure people present today are familiar with the road. Just briefly take a spin around the back. Oh, that's not the plan until there. Give it a second. Better. Just a quick spin around the boundaries. So the southwest, there's some properties. The southeast boundaries, mature hedgerow and trees, as is the northeast. That borders onto the Mead, the large houses in a cul-de-sac. There's a large property in the northeast corner, and then there's the road to the north, which is also broken hedgerow, mature hedgerow trees. So of importance that we've looked at is the amenity between this site and existing residents. We will get into the detail, obviously, of the highway safety, but obviously that in terms of principal development, it's a rural village, so the local plan proposes limited growth, and we'll perhaps get into the detail of that later. Because we don't have a highway housing land supply, that restrictive policy has less weight, limited weight. So as a settlement with some facilities, it's considered to be appropriate for development in principle. This is the access. Now I can see it up on the screen. For people a bit distant from there, I guess that's probably not a great use, is it? But you can see the red lines coming up on the access, and the blue lines show. If you can see it close up, it illustrates that through our highways officer will have reviewed that and seen that it's a safe access into and out of the site. So it's the key issues, as I've mentioned, as we've mentioned before, paragraph 11D of the National Planning Policy Framework is relevant. It's tilted balance that says we should approve sustainable development unless there are significant and demonstrable reasons that we should not. So I've just outlined there, and I'll run through them. Apologies for just reading what's on the screen. So it's policy compliant, affordable housing, significant weight, open market dwellings, the same. The contributions are policy. We've seen from appeals the And the interpretation of national planning policy framework is, if you're building housing, you get increased patronage of local facilities, which is good for their sustainability, economic stimulation through the actual process of building houses. So in terms of harm, we have loss of agricultural land, but being 3B, that's not best and most versatile, so that's limited weight. Loss of green space, also get limited weight. Reliance on private car, there's some facilities in the town, but for others, people might need to travel further, limited weight. And to a degree, the conflict with housing distribution policies, which I mentioned earlier, which are moderate. Excuse me a second while I catch up with my notes, which are on a different screen. So this plan wouldn't be, it is just indicative, which illustrates how the development could be delivered on the site. To say that they're mindful of amenity for neighbouring residents. So you can see there's quite a good proportion of green space at the edges. That southeast corner, the water attenuation feature and formal play. It's a reasonably low density, which would be appropriate for the setting. And I think important that the access there is quite it's kind of a green entrance to the site, which would be appropriate. I think that if you're looking for the access in the southwest there, you come in, there's a spur just going north, that property is the retained property that's already there, whereas the remainder would be demolished. To clarify section 106, I'm sure we'll get down, I'll read it out just to go through at pace. Policy compliance, affordable housing, education as requested, a similar play space, and we'll see that reserve matters still. Just the key policy issues mentioned earlier with policy SS1, settlement strategy, and SS2, development of rural settlements, district SS4, district-wide housing SS5. It is a settlement local plans, it's limited growth. It's a labour the point without a 5-year housing supply, they have limited weight. And what we're looking at within this is the impacts of them, what would be the needs of the people living in the properties in the future, and through review and formal consultation, no consultee has identified any concerns in terms of the infrastructure to be able to cope with the development. I put this more as a note for later. It's the National Planning Policy Framework. I won't go into that. That's probably more of a note myself. Sorry. Just some of the chapters that we look at in the National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 11, we're saying pick up largely on what the local plan policies are. So just to run through consultations and considerations, as everyone will be aware, the detailed comments are available on the website. The report, which I can't claim to have written, is very thorough in terms of its including and discussing all the consultation responses. So the two parish councils recommend refusal or object. But as I've listed there, just for completeness, there are no, the statutory consultees are identifying any significant reasons, significant demonstrable reasons why the application ought to be refused. Dorset Council, Somerset Highways, Essex Water, the Local Flood Authority, our colleagues in planning strategy, the Educational Authority, satisfied that getting the money needed for expansion of the primary school. The council housing specialist is happy with the affordable housing offer, and we would get into the detail of the mix and the location of the affordables at a later stage. NHS satisfied, Somerset Ecology Services, so phosphates that are outside the area. We'll look at environmental health. Again, it kind of relates to amenity issues satisfied. No issues have been raised in terms of heritage impact, in terms of listed buildings, conservation area, or archaeology. In the police designing out, crime officers has commented, but they again will be picked up at a reserve matter stage. There are no public letters of support. We have 93 public letters of objection, which are summarised in the report. Just a reminder of key issues. I've talked about some of them already. Principal development. I put in design impacts and character and appearance. See that the detailed design will come later. I'm satisfied that between the illustrative plan and considering impact on neighbouring residential amenity, I'm satisfied that that's acceptable. I'll come into highways safety in a bit, but in terms of location, sustainability, satisfied. And we've looked at hedgerows, trees, ecology, progress, so surface water, belt drainage, all been part of the process of discussing with the applicant, receiving consultation responses and working through those. Again, all dealt with satisfactory. I've got that repeated slide, and we've already seen that one. Oh, I've now just realised I've got the wrong. This was an earlier version, and I the version. Someone could bear with me. That goes into the detail of the access. Bear with me a second. Right, so I need to get that on the screen. Share. Oh, that's one share.
Stop sharing, starting.
In 30 seconds and we'll be back. Apologies for that. Got it. This was the one side that's missing, and I know it will be important. Can we see? Can I make it slightly larger?
Lost.
No. So, in response to our audits and discussions about the accessibility into the village, a package of measures that will be subject to Section 106 and Section 278 process of widened footways, priority working for vehicles, new crossing points, and via the development to the west will be linked through to Woodhays and Birch Grove into the settlement, into Head Street. I've put this picture up there. People might be familiar. That's just north of the access point, and that illustrates both how structures have been put in on the highway to make it safer for pedestrians, and how this type of measure can be included in what if the plan application is approved, but also mindful that they no doubt will have discussion about the safety of using what points as a shared surface between pedestrians and vehicles. It's as we've discussed earlier. If you're designing things new, you would have footways between 1.8 and 2 metres, but it's not the responsibility of a particular application to resolve an existing situation. So we're aware that at points along that access into Hen Street, there are shared services between cars and people walking, which is why we have I think the right word, so that it emphasise the importance to the providing access through the other development, so that people do have a safe way into the town. It's not that long ago, I was pushing a pushchair with a little kid in, and I would go the long route, it was safe. So that's the requirement that we're putting upon the applicants, that we're well aware of the issue on the highway there. We're going to raise that as a key issue. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Councillor. Just a recommendation back on this.
Thank you. So we'll move to public discussion on this one, and we will go to Paul Dimichki. Or if I've not pronounced that correctly, who's a local resident. Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, I'm Paul Dimichki, I'm a resident. The core principle of the NPF is the presumption in favour of sustainable development. This means that local planning authorities should only approve development proposals that align with the NPF's sustainability goals. This includes social sustainability. Sustainable developments should provide safe infrastructure for walking and cycling. This new development in Henchbridge is planned to be at the south side of the village, while all facilities are located to the north side. These include the shop, village pubs, village hall, playgrounds, sports facilities, and most importantly, the school. A development of yet another 52 houses with a likely 20+ further children of school age will either walk or be driven to school during the morning rush hour. In either case, there is a conflict with the NPF. Walking by any route without adequate pavements is extremely dangerous. Forcing residents into cars would be directly against one of the core principles of the NPF. Slightly older children will cycle independently down the high street to go to the pump track or the playing fields. They do it now, and more development on the south side of the village simply increases the risk of a serious accident. Further, there will be an issue with mothers parking outside the school during rush hour where there is no provision for parked cars. In inclement weather, this will cause complete deadlock and a much greater risk for pedestrians and children. South Somerset Policy TA5 concerns the impact of new developments on transport. New development should be designed to maximise the potential for sustainable transport. This includes, and I quote, securing inclusive, safe and convenient access on foot, cycle and by public and private transport that address the needs of all. Ensuring that the expected nature and volume of traffic and parked vehicles generated by the development would not have a detrimental impact and would not compromise safety. The officer's report promoting the Birch Grove Church Street route is not an alternative. It is not a viable safe route for pedestrians or cyclists. It is narrow, has blind corners, and is partly without a footpath at all. Cyclists using this route would be forced down the whole length of Church Street and back to the High Street to access the facilities. Increased motor traffic may well turn this very same route into a back run, an even greater danger.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Well, yeah, it should be.
Thank you. If I can call Keith Waterhouse. Speak.
Hello, I'm Keith Waterhouse. I've lived in Henchbridge for 22 years. I'm a pedestrian and I still drive coaches and HGVs, both locally and throughout Europe. It was mentioned a few months ago about there not being any flood problems with this development. Yet on Sunday night, the water to 4 feet from the entrance to this site was 3 feet deep on the main A357. There are 2 pedestrian routes planned on this site to come into Southmead Lane, which is where I live. From this site, it's probably designed for walkers, to come from the site up Southgate Lane to get to the shops or to the high street or to the school or wherever. There's a problem also that future residents probably use this same access road to park their cars actually in Southgate Lane. Well, there's another problem, because the hedge on Southgate Lane is not kept down by the council. Fire engines, lorries, refuse vehicles can't get through. So the tractors for the commercial developments down in the bottom for the agriculture. So they hit people's cars that are there already. So if there's a fire down at the Mead, which is right at the very bottom of the lane, you're not going to get fire engines through where people have parked their cars, yet you don't know where the people live. At present, they can knock on people's doors. So Southgate Lane is just this very, very narrow road that needs to be addressed. 2 cars will all be required, as there is very little public transport. There's no shop facilities. There's very little work, and the school is actually fully committed. The new development entrance and the exit is in the middle of a traffic calming amidst parked and stationary cars. Large vehicles not easy to get in and out, and the whole of the A357 width is required for them to do this. There's no turning facilities for large vehicles to actually get out of the site, although the demonstration shows and says that a commercial vehicle turning right goes to the middle of the road. Can't do that because it's completely wrong. It should be the other side of the road. It just will not happen because you've got stationary vehicles actually in front of you that are backed up through the high street. There's also a lot of cars that are parked on the A357 at present out front of people's houses. There's no alternative room for these people to park their cars by their houses. And I question whether the council planning liaison officers have actually contacted them to suggest an alternative parking place. The local school is full, as I've said. According to information from the school governors, this development alone will require about 21 new school places. If you add 45 new school places for the other development, that's 66 extra children with no space at school.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you. Let's now move on to Deborah Hetheram, who's also a local resident.
This authority's own road safety audit identified numerous issues which have largely been ignored in the subsequent supposed independent one conducted on a bank holiday Monday at 3:30 in the afternoon, a very quiet time on this road. A main concern was the tracking of a refuse lorry, which was shown to be partially crossing into the opposing carriageway and pedestrian space. This was countered by the independent review, suggesting that the truck could reposition itself closer to the centre line. With extra rounds and time pressures, are the refuse drivers really likely to do this? And the question concerning is this the largest vehicle expected to use this access has not even been answered. Also identified was a risk of a head-on collision occurring when drivers exiting left and looking right from the new development run the risk of hitting vehicles heading through the pinch point, which will be on the opposing carriageway towards the village. The highway authorities claim that there have been no injuries or collisions on the A357 is inaccurate and misleading. Collision data is not up to date. Since then, a resident living in the cottage adjacent to this pinch point was seriously hurt with life-changing injuries caused by a speeding vehicle travelling through while she was getting her refuse bins in. This is without the additional pressures of the proposed entrance to this new development distracting drivers' concentration. Another incident not reported was a resident hit by the wing mirror of an HGV passing through the narrow high street, one of the recommended walking routes to the facilities, and the only level route that the disabled could realistically take. This goes to prove that even if the proposed pedestrian improvements are made, the risk of another occurrence of this nature or worse does not diminish. Buildings are also regularly hit that the planning and the highways officers have both seen. I note that David Green has recommended a condition to stipulate that the proposed improvements be secured in accordance with the walking route assessment safety audit prior to first occupation. But there's huge concern that the technical audit by Highways has not yet been done and may prove elements of the scheme to be unsafe or unworkable, as was the previous traffic light scheme. And that Henstridge will be left with 2 unoccupied developments being a magnet for crime and antisocial behaviour. Summing up, David Green suggests that occupants can travel by foot and cycle to the facilities as a result of the safety measures in a measure that's both safe and convenient. As I've just pointed out, there's a real possibility that this could turn out not to be the case. Without any guarantees, this development does not comply with the council's TA5 policy. Local authorities have an absolute duty to
Thank you,
protect.
Gemma, for your, thank you. We'll please move on to Veronica Smith from the Henstridge Parish Council.
On referring to the designer's response to the RSA 1 of February 2024, and the proposed levels of traffic for this planning application have been calculated, and the worst case scenario is an 11 to 16% increase. This is considered as lightly trafficked, and the impact of 52 houses cannot be considered as severe. However, presumably, this has been calculated on current traffic. As we know, recently, the development over the other side of the road by Barrett's for 130 house development will also increase traffic by approximately 35%. And that's based on the calculations for the 52 houses. With both sites, this is a total increase in traffic levels of approximately 50%. Is this still considered lightly trafficked and not a severe impact? Interestingly, this leads me to another huge concern. I quote from the safety audit, the route for school children walking to school has been assessed using the road GB guidelines as an unsafe walking route. Because the route is adjacent to a major road carrying significant traffic flow, it would be necessary to provide a continuous footway. This was the same condition which was deemed necessary by the appeal inspector for Barrett development, which has now been overridden by the authority. The audit goes on to point out the failure to provide a route deemed non-hazardous could result in claims in Somerset Council for free transport. The report said the route should be assessed when young people will be walking to and from school, using the guidelines for the report going to the admission scheme. Has this been done? I would question why the designer's report response on the RSN 1 contradicts the safety audit report when talking about traffic levels. The designer's report states lightly trafficked. The safety report states significant traffic flow. And what will happen with the 50% increase in traffic? I realise that each planning application should be assessed on its own merits, but I feel that is not by not taking into consideration the impact of the 130 houses on the opposite side of the road, it gives a disproportionate view of this particular application. Pedestrian safety is of the utmost importance. When considering the aforementioned calculations and comments that I have made, I believe this application should be rejected.
Thank you. Can I now invite Nicola Clark and Hayley Burt, who are the new board members? I'll let you decide which one's going on.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, committee. Here we are again, discussing yet another large application in a rural community that doesn't have infrastructure to support it. The suggestion of using Woodhays, Birch Grove and Church Street as alternative routes is massively misguided. These routes aren't suitable for the increase in traffic or for the pedestrian improvements that are suggested. The paths are narrow, there are blind corners, and the extra vehicles will turn it into a dangerous rat run. I genuinely don't really understand where pedestrians are expected to go anymore, because it's definitely not on any roads in Henstridge, and there aren't enough safe routes to walk in this vicinity. There's a reality, how on earth are people meant to get their children to school safely from that end of the village? I'm already working with the school to try and get safer roads, but this development will make everything so much more difficult and dangerous than it needs to be for these children and their parents. This will be made worse by the cumulative impact. With this development, plus the unbuilt barracks scheme, statistics show that traffic levels could rise by as much as 50%. The MPPF is clear that the cumulative harm to the highway network should be taken seriously. As I've said to you all in this committee before, our local roads are already struggling, and this really can make things better for us. I'd like to take a second to address the S106 contribution to outdoor leisure. I know that one of the proposed contributions is at a commercial facility near the airfield. Can I just check that this is correct, that over £40,000 of the S106 money is going to benefit commercial enterprise, which is over 40 minutes walk away from the proposed development? I'd also like to address the matter of the 5-year land supply problem, which is tied to the phosphates issue, as we know. This shouldn't be used as an excuse to allow overdevelopment in a location that just isn't sustainable. This plan, as others have said, risks dividing Henstridge into two disconnected parts, north and south, with no safe way for them to come together as a community. Strategic planning is another big gap here, especially with Stallbridge expanding just a mile away. The MPPF makes it clear that local authorities have a duty to coordinate, and it would be good to hear what the answers and reassurances on this. To sum up, committee, this development doesn't add value to Henstridge. Instead, it poses a danger to our school children, to their families, and to the community as a whole. As one resident online puts it, this proposal benefits a small number of people, but risks being destructive and dangerous for hundreds. I urge you to refuse this application and prioritise the safety and well-being of our village. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nicola. Nicola, who is the author?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for fitting me in. You get through on deja vu when it comes to Henstridge and building applications, going on over 7 years now. And the two reasons I've had to ask the committee to reject this application are the safety concerns and flooding. Your own notes and your own pre-information, you would look through there, obviously. 27th of October 2023, policy TA5, you've already rejected it for safety reasons. The application across the road. You cannot take this application in isolation of 130 houses across the Stallbridge Road. And again, on 29th of April 2024, again, policy TA5, which has already been referenced today, you rejected an application for safety reasons. Now, there's a traffic report here, and a highway authority report, says scheme pedestrian infrastructure improvements have been proposed, and an independent safety audit found no causes for concern. Well, people who came to live in this estate or the other 130 houses would walk down High Street. Most people don't take the pretty route. They take the fast route, they take the short route. The short route is the High Street. And anyone who's walked along the High Street knows full well that you are mixing with cars, you are mixing with vans, you are mixing with lorries. And the number of vehicles is rising. The number of large vehicles is rising. The council has a counter in South Cheriton, which you're all aware of. That counter has shown us since 2016, the number of large vehicles has risen by 40%. So that's 100 more a day. And the number of LGVs has risen by 24%. So 130 more a day. So the number of vehicles, particularly large vehicles, which are particularly unsafe, have risen in this area. So it's unsafe for people walking along that road, and they will walk along the High Street. Second point, which was raised and used as a reason for refusal in 2017, relates to drainage and flooding. I may have missed it, but I've looked through this report and I see brief, inadequate references to drainage from the 130 houses. My understanding is that drainage goes across the road into this application. You've already been told that there was flooding again along the Stallbridge Road just recently. there's flooding in Sandwich Lane, there's flooding in the Meads, because the water flows downhill. And the ability to take it away is not there. I haven't seen within this report any adequate addressing of that particular issue. So I urge members, please to reject it for safe reasons, TA5 flooding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I invite Stephen Bainbridge, who is the next agent from Greensill Sailor Hunt?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Thank you for letting me speak today on behalf of the applicant. I'd like to convey my thanks first to Mr. Jones for his presentation and to all concerned in the presentation of the comprehensive committee report. The application is in an outline form with all matters reserved, save for the detail of the access. Therefore, by law, matters of layout, external appearance, scale and landscaping cannot be determined at this stage. The proposal is for two new homes, access, open space and infrastructure. The application represents the culmination of significant engagement with officers and consultees over a 2.5-year period. A pre-application inquiry was submitted for the development of the land in March 2022 and found acceptable then by the planning officer. The application was submitted in June last year, and in the 18 months the application has been valid, we've engaged fully with the planning officers and the consultees, and as a result, there are now 0 objections from any technical consultees and support from the planning department. Locally, concerns have been raised about the impact on infrastructure, especially the road network. No infrastructure providers have objected. After a thorough review, including the successful road safety audits independently and by the Highway Authority, the Highway Authority found no grounds for objection. The proposals include active travel measures, including an improvement of the pedestrian experience between the site and the village core for the existing and new residents. Current data from Home Finder shows an average of 121 people bidding on each available affordable home in South Somerset, with no affordable homes shown as available within this village. The proposal will deliver 52 homes to redress the council's chronic shortfall of housing land, 35% of which will be affordable, 18 in total, including 4 first homes for local people to purchase at a discounted rate in perpetuity. The development will also provide open space in line with the council's guidelines, addressing the village's identified lack of play facilities and secure financial contributions towards education with over 160,000, just to update, also known for 10% increase for net parliament was missed, for the primary school, and more than £123,000 for equipped play, youth facilities and changing rooms. Importantly, the site is outside of any nutrient-sensitive catchments, avoiding delays caused by phosphate mitigation measures, which have slowed down so many of the housing schemes in the South Somerset area. Given the application's compliance with the local plan, the LDPF, the chronic undersupply of housing land, 0 issues raised on technical matters by your relevant experts, and with support of your planning officers, I respectfully request that you approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If policies, sorry to everyone that's been registered to speak. I'd like to now go over to the offices.
I have a letter of confirmation.
Who's that?
It's importance of Henry. So my name is Annie, I'm the clerk. I had verification yesterday. He will be speaking.
Don't put it on that. They need to go on there, then. You're gonna have to let them.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Would you like to come forward, please?
Thank you, Chair, and councillors. Innisfree Parish Council recommended refusal on the 30th of July 23, principally because the scale of development is excessive, not justified by local need, and the road network is unsafe. We've had 93 public comments of objection, none in support. This development and the Townsend Green opposite will result in an increase of 182 houses, contributing to an increase of 27% in the local plan period 2006 to 2028. There is no local need for development on this scale. We are again facing the negation of our local plan status as a rural settlement because of a failure of the planning authority to deliver a 5-year land supply. The conditions of pedestrian safety in the A357 High Street imposed by the appeal decision in 2018 on Townsend Green development have been abandoned by your council officers under delegated powers. This has removed the safe, direct pedestrian route through the High Street, which was a key point in the applicant's travel plan. We agreed with your decisions of last April in this very chamber on the Townsend Green application that the alternative provisions would not improve pedestrian safety, would fail to secure inclusive, safe and convenient access to village facilities on foot, cycle and public transport. The proposed alternative route in this application is neither safe nor convenient. The plans before us will result in the village developing a second part in the south, separated from facilities by a narrow and dangerous stretch of road. The tilted balance in favour of sustainable development presumed by the NPPF will not be achieved. This development is not sustainable and the harm to our community cannot be justified. A final point. Hen Street is fortunate to have an award-winning recreation ground with outdoor play facilities in Ash Walk, including sports pitches and changing rooms. We do not understand how improved changing facilities at the commercial operation some 2 miles distant next to the airfield runway will benefit the village community. Please refuse this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to pick up on 3 points. Listening to the comments being made, was cumulative impact. There was a point on flooding and highways. And on highways, I was going to comment in that respect. But if I could, there was also a question about the Section 106 contribution as well. So I'll look at that. So if I could do it in this order, it will enable me to go through the report and come back. So if I could do the cumulative impact and flooding, if John could then comment on highways, and then I'll come back to them. So cumulative impact, obviously, every time we get an application, we are aware of the applications that have been approved and we consider it in that context. Hopefully that's clear. I've looked at paragraph 12.7.1 of the report, goes into detail, picking up what the lead local flood authority said. It's flood zone 1, so that's not lowest risk from coastal or fluvial flooding, but I think it was Mr. Waterhouse and Councillor Burt mentioned flooding. I think that is in the report. It mentions groundwater, high groundwater is present. For what the lead local flood authority said and the conditions they've proposed, is that they're satisfied that the surface water and groundwater can be addressed suitably through a mixture of implementation is limited, but a mixture of measures of surface water and storage and rainwater harvesting and an attenuation basin. So the lead local flood authority, the advising us that Somerset Speed local flood authority is satisfied that that can all be addressed. I appreciate at the moment you might be seeing water running onto the field, but if you've got housing development, you've then got a managed system. If I could pass to John for highways, and I'll come back on the section 106. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm mindful of time, Chair, so I'll be as brief as I can for you. In relation to the questions that have obviously been raised, I appreciate this has been covered members a number of times and discussions had previously. Obviously, in relation to the Taylor Wimpey scheme that's sat across the road in terms of their point of access, etc., that's obviously been to a planning appeal and the inspector found to approve that appeal. that was given, that's occurred. In relation to, obviously, there's been discussion, as the members have heard from the committee, in relation to the proposed on-site potential pedestrian movements and mitigation. For the members' briefing, appreciate the scheme or where we're talking about in terms of the location, it's very difficult to provide any on-site mitigation that is suitable in relation to the scheme in terms of the wide area connections. Obviously, officers, both planning and highways, have worked extensively with the applicant to make sure we can provide the best and safest point of access for peds and cycles that we can from this scheme to go through. Obviously, that has been reflected in the report for members to read and digest. But obviously, as you say, both the highways officer and the service manager of planning also met on site to walk through the routes to go through and discuss these matters as well. So I believe from a point of view of highways, certainly all aspects have been covered. There's been some number of road safety audits that have occurred, and there's been back and forth between our audit team and them. And we're in a position now that we have satisfied the proposals that have been brought forward and acceptable in highways terms. And now hand back to John.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Chair. Very quickly, so it's section 3, sort of paragraph 1, 2, 3 of the report. I think was it Smith or was it the council that referred to £40,000? So obviously £80,000 is for equipped space and youth facility, and £40,000 for a changing room. They're appropriate in terms of money that's taken for the community in a wider area that's appropriate to the mass of the development. So is that 40,000 you're referring to, the changing rooms?
Yes.
Sorry, we're cutting.
Oh, sorry, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
She used the word member.
I'm sorry, we're debating amongst the committee now, not people that are not on the committee, if you're Councillor Osborne.
Chairman, I believe that Councillor Clark, the ward member, raised a very valid point and a legitimate question about.
Councillor Osborne. Thomas is going back over the point to clarify. The ward member is not a member of this committee. Do you have anything against that?
Nothing for that, Chair, thank you.
I was just going to confirm what Tom's already confirmed in terms of the obligations that are set out on page 121. Appreciate from comments received during public speaking, those obligations may not be directed to immediate facilities within really close proximity to the site. They may be going to further facilities, but it is a contribution that's in accordance with policy, which is why it's been secured, and it would result in investment of some place both within sports pitches and things in the wider area.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to points of clarification from members and questions from members at the same time if they seem to be emerging. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chairman. And since deja vu is enormous, because we've been here several, we have been here before, and the transport and highways issues still remain. That's just a comment. There are several points I'd like clarification or I've got questions on, so start straight away. Condition 33 to 34, I think it was page 123 of the ModGov papers. Could you explain, please, what you mean by partial removal of PD rights? What PD rights are you proposing to remove and why?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to stop sharing what I've done now. The report. I'm looking for condition 33.
It's condition 32, 33 stroke 34. And you should have it, I think it's on page 123.
If you bear with me.
The actual condition is on page 170. Condition 33 actually specifies which parts of the permitted development requirements are being removed or suggested to be removed. That doesn't mean any future occupiers can't do it. It just means they don't have an automatic right to do it. So they would have to apply to us as a local authority to enable them to do it. But that includes enlargements, improvements and other alterations. enlargements of a dwelling by construction of additional stories, because we can do that in PD now, roof additions, other roof alterations, gates, fences, walls and other means of enclosure. That's condition 33. Condition 34 looks at gas compounds, electric substations and buildings for the purpose of electric communications or water pumping stations, all to be submitted and approved by us.
Thank you. And my second question relates to the pedestrian crossing. I don't know whether there was one in there, I didn't quite follow it. But what are the arrangements for people being able to cross the A357 main road from this site to get to the other site so as they can use Woodhays Church Lane? Because most of the facilities are on the other side to this development.
Thank you, Chair. I will endeavour to get a drawing, which I understand there's what you call a refuge. That'd be I think it's just at the southern edge of the access, I recall from the drawings.
It's a central refuge, so you basically dash into the middle of it, wait till the traffic from the other way goes. So that could be an interesting exercise with the planner buggy and just swinging over. Not to mention invalid buggy as well, but we'll leave that for the moment. My other question is why, and it's going back to Townsend Landing, and again it's going back to page 127, I think it is. The collection laws, every time the application for Townsend Landing's traffic came to this committee, we refused it, and we refused the discharge of conditions. And suddenly, on the 2nd of August, they were actually discharged by officer delegation. Why did it not come back to this committee for a decision, which potentially it should have done because we actually turned it down? So why did an officer override a committee and not bring this back? Because there were massive concerns over this and in terms of breaches as well. So I'd like a response, please, as to why it did not come back to this committee, why the officers took it upon themselves to issue an approval when you consistently refused.
Thank you. I'll answer that because it's a technical point. I did give committee an update on this when it occurred. So this is basically condition 10 of an appeal decision that was approved by the planning inspector. It set out a number of highway alterations that were required. The applications that you would have seen at committee were section 73 applications. So they would have been asking to vary the conditions to remove that as an obligation, which was refused. They asked for an amended scheme. Again, that was section 73. That was refused by members. What they had, which we have discharged, was a discharge of condition. Under the scheme of delegation, that's a delegated function to officers. What we have to do is look at the technical information that they've submitted and determine whether technically it is safe. So the highway traffic light scheme that was road safety audited by the Highway Authority was deemed unsafe. So we couldn't accept the traffic light scheme that was originally imposed by the planning inspector. In that respect, the wording of the condition said we have to have due regard to a number of items listed on the condition. So the question to our legal department was, is it sufficient to have due regard to it in that we road safety audited it and it fails? And the technical authority thinks that this alternative is acceptable. Is that sufficient? And the answer was yes. So from the discharge of condition for the 130, that was discharged by us under delegated authority in accordance with the expert advice we've had from the Highway Authority. But that is separate from this application, but appreciate this application saying further traffic on that road where this is an issue.
Thank you. Any further questions for members?
Yeah, I was just going to ask for the avoidance of doubt. Could you put a map up, please, which shows where the Townsend Landing site is, or this site is, the Townsend Farm site is in relation to the Townsend Landing site? I think it would be quite helpful to see how close those two run together.
Thank you. While the officers are doing that, I'll go to councillor Ware.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to go on about the tipping balance again. Yes, so can the officers please outline their recommendation that this is under the MPPS balance is right to approve, as opposed to the conditions which could be said that we should be not agreeing this.
Yeah, thank you. You got to read something, that's fine. There is a section within the report that covers the tilted balance, which I think is what you're referring to. So effectively, that tilted balance says that automatically residential development is weighed in favour, assuming that we're satisfied that all the other impacts aren't demonstrable in terms of harm. So if the local authority area had a 5-year land supply, you're starting off with a neutral balance. Because there isn't a 5-year land supply, the presumption already sits in favour. So in terms of harms of the development, the harms obviously weigh against the proposal, but it has to weigh against the proposal so significantly that it outweighs the tilted balance already in favour of the development.
Can I come back, Chair?
You can, yeah.
On that point, are we saying that the fact this is a rural settlement, which has to be treated quite specifically under our local plan, are we saying that all the matters which have to be dealt with under the local plan for a rural settlement aren't sufficient to tip the balance in favour of not agreeing this application? Is that what the officers are saying? And how do they justify this rural settlement argument? Where we've, in their own report, it is already developed for a rural settlement by some degree.
Thank you. In terms of rural settlements, you know, it's difficult because I think within South Somerset there's quite a few identified rural settlements, and certainly from the committees that I've been on recently, there's quite a few of those that are having quite significant residential developments on the edge of. In terms of what this site has experienced, it's had the consent of 130. This is another application for 52, so it's another big residential development on a rural settlement. In terms of the policy, it requires the area to have at least 2 sort of rural facilities. There's quite a number listed in the report, so there's a paragraph in the report that covers on the rural settlement and the facilities that are available within that settlement. Based on that, it would be considered that this rural settlement is relatively sustainable, but we would then look at the actual harms of the development, so highway safety being one of them.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I will move us into the debate. Councillor Osborne.
Sorry about that, Chairman. I've actually got 2, very quickly. My first one is, when it comes to the sort of concluding line, why are ward members not consulted along with area chairs when it comes to sort of signing off the recommendations, assuming it is approved? I'm just curious because it's not just this one it's occurring on. It seems to be that you're signing off as officers, using your powers of delegation as officers, but only in consultation with the area chair. Why are ward members being excluded from this process when they are the ones that know the most about the area concerned? We used to involve ward members. We certainly did at Area West in South Somerset. Why have we stopped doing it now?
The question you're asking relates to the scheme of delegation and how we sign off referral reports to committee and the discharge. This is the actual separate order, which is actually separate to this application. So this application is a planning application that's before members for a decision. If you want to talk to me offline outside of the constitution and the process that all the applications go through, I'm quite happy to do that, but I'm just aware of time for this application.
Okay, thank you. If there are no,
Take that offline, and the other question I have relates to page 130. Additional comments, 29th of October, 2024, assessments, audits, undertaking and findings on highways. I'd just like clarification, because this paragraph is slightly baffling me. The following issues were discussed. Sweat path analysis showed refuse freight body overhanging the footway. It was pointed out that the drawing could be amended to demonstrate this was a positioning error. This can be rectified during the technical design process. Can you clarify that, please? Because it's either overhanging or it's not. And altering plans will not make it right. Can you just clarify, please? Because it seems a very odd thing to write.
Charles, do you have an answer to that?
Yes, no problem. When it comes to these kind of technical drawings, when we're dealing with tracking diagrams, etc., we obviously track the wheel arch, we also track the chassis. So there's a number of different lines within the application, on those plans that show how the tracking of the vehicle lines are going and how the chassis goes. Obviously, as part of the plan you're referring to, it sounds that the initial initial drawing showed that there was a tracking of the chassis that overran onto the footway. The highway authority suggested that obviously that is amended. You can amend that through the use of tracking software, so that you're able to then manoeuvre and change how that vehicle then works so that element can fall away. So it is part of the software process of doing the tracking drawings and everything through that process.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move us into the debate now. Who would like to start this? Is there a chapter points? Expertise.
Basis that nobody else wants to fight on it. This, as I'm sure Councillor Whale was thinking when he asked earlier clarification questions, is yet another one of those where nobody would want to do this, but the system presents us with no alternatives. The tinted values of the cage. So we have a much higher bar to refuse. We actually to absolutely prove that that there is a harm and that harm is a substantial harm. And at the moment, the advice I see before me does not indicate that there is a substantial harm. But equally, I'm very sympathetic with the many people who've spoken about how unfair this is on smaller settlements. The original local plan did envisage that there would be a lot of development in smaller settlements, but some, like Henstridge, have seen an extraordinary proportion of growth. But I don't think that changes the conservation here. We are instructed by to resolve in accordance with the plan and the planning performance framework and it's a planning policy framework. And in this particular case, not seeing medical action, letting vote against it. I would want to vote for it, but equally I can't vote against.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think this application to then stop the sort of issue with highways with safety concern. I think sat here as councillors, we were there to think about the safety of our residents. And in my view, I'm wrong, but I'd rather put housing statistics to one side and actually concern about the safety of residents. I think the only time this council is ever probably going to realise that is when there's a dead body in the middle of the road. I think it's shocking. We need to really take this into consideration, the safety of our residents, I think. Until putting the housing statistics before that. That's my view. I know people might disagree, but that's just my view on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Webb.
Yes, I think hearing what Councillor Steve said and very sympathetic, I think we have got a cause here to refuse this application on the cumulative impact of the various applications, this one included, on the rural settlement which we're talking about. And that, in my view, there is sufficient now to say, yes, there is this large effect which tilts the balance sufficiently for us to refuse this. And that would be my thoughts. I'll hear the rest of the discussion, but I will maybe be making a proposal on that, Chair.
Thank you, councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I support councillor Way, who's got the person before me, the whole issue of cumulative impact. 130 plus 52 gives 182 dwellings. The total for rural settlements overall was something like 2,400. So we are asking one settlement to take of the entire allocation for rural settlements. I think we need to think very carefully about this, because if we pass this, we are in effect saying that we are setting policy SS2, which is designed to protect our rural settlements. We are in effect setting it aside, because at the moment it seems as though it's open season wherever, and the rural settlements have no way of defending themselves in one way or the other. So I support councillor Wale, and I do think that in this case cumulative impact is important, especially as relying on something as nebulous as a refuge to get people from one side of what is a hugely busy main road to another. There should be a proper pedestrian crossing at least between those two. But I support councillor Wale. I think this is too much for what is a rural settlement, and either we have a policy in relation to them as we don't. I think we need to think very carefully about what we are doing, especially in terms of ending our settlement strategy as well, which says in fine.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to make a comment? If not, I'm minded to go back to councillor Wale.
Oh, thank you. I think I would therefore propose that we refuse this application on the cumulative effect on those words. And we are setting aside policy SS2.
And upholding our
settlement strategy.
Sorry, we're making it up to go along, but and upending our settlement strategy of our local plan.
Thank you. Councillor Patrick.
What was that thing?
And no, I'm not going to agree.
Oh.
No. I do sometimes agree. So we've got the meeting to finish. I am in two minds about this, but I think I would like to urge my colleagues to exercise a bit of caution here. I think this will benefit here and we will lose. I think that cost of all of the young stuff would be unreasonable. I don't think the policy reasons are back up. I think we need to be very, very careful with this. It's only 52 houses, it's not 1,000. I might do application.
Thank you, councillor Osborne.
If councillor Wale is minded to propose overturning the loss of recommendation, I'm more than prepared to second him. So you now have a proposer and a second councillor.
I know exactly what we have on the table. Thank you for that. Councillor Wale, before we do take a vote on that proposal, can I ask you to clarify the whole motion, the whole proposal with your planning reason?
So we refuse the application on the community effect in the rural settlement, which is to, against policies.
It is against policy SS5. It is against policy SS5 because you are overriding the settlement strategy.
Access to policies. Yeah.
Getting very
Yes, Chair, it's the old problem of us councillors having at the last minute to produce a legal settlement, which is grossly unfair. And that's why we're between us putting it together as we go along. And it's a problem that you've had on many applications, and quite frankly, you want to come away and put it all out, I'll give you 5 minutes. We will write it and bring it back to you. You can't expect one off the hoof
Right, okay.
from non-professional planners.
I'm quite happy to give you 2 minutes to come up with the wording and then.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, Well,
Yeah, I will do when I get my equipment back again again, yeah. Yeah. Just about.
You written that, All right, thanks for the mail.
Yeah, thank you. Local plan, which will undermine, it's full stop after local plan. And under, it's against settlement SS5, which is the settlement hierarchy of the local plan.
Thank you, councillor Osborne, you're happy to second that?
I am very happy to second that.
Thank you, can I have a show of all those in favour of that proposal? 4. Those against? 4. Second bet. 5. Hang on a second, right. Put your hands back up for those in favour, please.
Right.
In favour is 4. Those against? 5. 2, 3, 4, it's 5. So that proposal has fallen. I'm now looking for a further proposal. Councillor King.
Then I propose the officer's recommendations.
I'll second that, please. Okay, that is proposed and recommended in the report, seconded by Councillor Patrick. All those in favour?
Sorry, what was the?
As a proposal, officer's report. Is 2, 4, 5. Those against? Is 4, any abstentions? Right. Okay, so that, application is passed.
Yeah, there was one miss.
Thank you, members. I asked that members, if you've got questions on the application this afternoon, we take this opportunity to speak to officers. And we will reconvene the second meeting at 3 o'clock in an hour's time. Let's get down to everyone back on time.